Now streaming.
Okay, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is Grant Cameron, and welcome to the 60 Minutes post-game show. We've gathered some of the best researchers around to do an analysis of what just happened on 60 Minutes. And for people who've been following Twitter and Facebook, we're going to have a special guest join us at the top of the next hour. And I think we got a story that's better than 60 Minutes. So stay tuned, or if you got to go somewhere, come back in the next hour and listen to what's going to happen. I just want to do one introduction today. I have my assistant, Desta Barnaby, who's running the show here. She's in the background. And just for people, a lot of people ask me, who was that person who took the blue anomaly over the house? Well, it was Desta Barnaby. Can you open your mic there, Desta, and give people a little bit of detail as to what happened with that photograph? Even Bob McGwier was asking me, who took that photo? You took a series of photos. Tell me about the photos.
Oh my God. It's just, I did a meditation and went out and took a couple pictures. That's it.
It was pretty cool. You had the three little blue balls flying over top of your house there.
Yeah.
And so it was really good. And so now everybody knows who took the photos. Thanks a lot. Okay, now I want to turn it over to my two hosts for tonight that are going to sort of run the show and ask questions and move the chat around. My one is an assistant that helps me out of Illinois. I always sort of claim that she's the great-great-granddaughter of Abraham Lincoln, but she claims she's not. Nicole Sakach, how you doing tonight?
Hi, Grant. I'm doing well tonight.
There you go. And you got the strange lighting behind you. You look like you're in another Matrix dimension or whatever.
Might be.
You got your ambient lighting.
I might be.
Hey, thanks for helping to host this. You're the one that actually suggested this. And then the 60 Minutes thing came up and it actually fit in just perfectly that you wanted to do this disclosure panel. So thanks for helping me out here. And the other one I have is my friend who has the biggest paranormal UFO radio show in Canada from Spaced Out Radio, Dave Scott. How are you doing?
I am great, Grant. Thank you so much for having me take part in this.
Beautiful. I know you guys like this. I don't like the hosting part, so I'm going to hand it over to two of you, and you can introduce the guests that we have, and we'll go from there.
Nicole, you want to start?
Sure. I'll just do a quick introduction. Joining us tonight, we have brilliant researcher Cheryl Costa, and we also have Jeff Kingsbury from the podcast Strange Recon. We are also joined with MUFON board member and MJ12 researcher, Tom Whitmore. And we also have with us Melinda Leslie, researcher, experiencer, skywatcher extraordinaire. And we also have Don Schmitt, Mr. Roswell, and Bob McGwier with us as well, of Science Bob fame from Spaced Out Radio. So Dave, was there anything you wanted to include? We have a few others joining us later tonight, so we'll introduce them as they come in.
I think when it comes to a panel like this, we have to take a look at the resumes of each and every one of them that are on this panel. And I think this is absolutely second to none, where we can gather this much UFO brain power in one location and have a sweet, frank discussion on everything that has happened. Of course, tonight it is about 60 minutes, and the article that they just put out tonight, it was about 20 minutes long. It was a who's who of who's in the topic right now, from Christopher Mellon and Lou Elizondo to Marco Rubio and David Fravor. We had a real good taste of everything that was going on. And Bob McGwier, I'd like to start with you, Science Bob, because you actually streamed the show to me, because on the West Coast, this show is playing as we speak right now. So I got to see it a little bit earlier. But for you, Bob, were you happy with what was put out there, or were you a little bit disappointed? Tell us your feelings.
So I didn't personally expect more than what we got. That said, I sure did wish we would get more, but we did get to see Fravor's wing person, Alex, who is a lieutenant commander in the Navy, and she is a super hot shot pilot. And we finally got to meet her and hear some of her story. And why she did not come forward until now. She decided it was time for her to do it and that it was her duty. So that part was good. We also saw something I was not expecting to see, given all the hoopla. I was not expecting to see Knapp and Corbell's video from the USS Kidd. I thought that CBS would not run it because I didn't think they could, in the amount of time required, change their plan for not showing anything for which they did not have provenance. But the thing that changed is the Pentagon said, this is a real video of something that flew over the Kidd and the group that was out there, and therefore CBS decided to add it. Those two things were kind of the major deal. Everything else was old news.
All right, let's move on to you, Grant Cameron, since this is your channel. We should probably get you in here nice and early. For you, when you looked at this video from 60 Minutes today, is this a story to you that is 3 years too late? Or is it a story that it's just in time because of what's coming up on June 25th?
First of all, I was a little bit disappointed, but I almost like Bob, I didn't really expect much more. This is like the classic major media story where it's get somebody who believes, somebody who sort of doesn't believe, and you balance it out and you throw a couple of videos in there to spice the thing up. So I really didn't think they really went all that far. And you know, it was a story, but what they're going to say, whether it's Lou Elizondo or Mellon, that story was not intended for you and I and the people on this panel. It was intended for the guy on the street who doesn't know what's going on. And they may be going, ooh, that was fantastic. I know my mother was sitting there watching it, and she was like just watching it, and she didn't say anything, but she was carefully watching the video. And that's what I think they're going to go to, that it wasn't really intended for us. Almost like you remember the James Fox documentary where people all said, oh, it's the same old stuff. But we got to realize this wasn't intended for us. It was intended to elevate the consciousness of the general public in the United States.
See, and normally I would agree with you. And I think it's great that 60 Minutes finally jumped on the bandwagon 3 years too late with this. And I know I'm being a little bit critical, and I'm probably going to take some heat for that. But I mean, with everything new that has come out, Grant, aren't you surprised that there wasn't more on the USS Kidd incident or what happened in 2015?
Well, again, if you've dealt, with the media, you realize that these guys have, probably 4 hours of film and interviews and stuff, and they've got to cut it down to like 20 minutes. And most of the good stuff ends up on the floor, and they're just sort of like balancing the thing out. And I agree. I mean, it's late, but the stuff that we've got, like the guest we've got coming, is some new stuff that we're on the leading edge of knowing things that are important. Whereas I think they're just trying to sort of put out a fluffy story that interests people. So I can't. I can't really blame them. I did. That's what I expected. And I think that's what Bob said too. It was no surprise to me what they did.
I want to add one thing, Grant. We did hear a straightforward, directly to the point, a confirmation of what many of us knew from other sources, but had never come out in the public. Lieutenant Graves said they saw these things every single time they got in an airplane, every single day for over 2 years. That's major.
Yeah, that's a major. Yeah.
Very true.
I agree.
Very true. Melinda Leslie, can we bring you in here momentarily? As we discuss this 60 Minutes panel tonight, there's going to be a lot of questions, a lot of answers that we have. You've been following this. You have ties very closely to Jim Semivan that you're very open with. For you, looking at this piece, was this something that you were quite impressed with? Melinda, you might have to unmute. There you are.
No, she's still muted.
All right, Melinda, we'll have to go back to you on this one. Tom Whitmore, let's get your opinion.
I thought it was a perfectly good piece for where the public is at right now. I think Grant is absolutely right. It's not pointed toward us UFO types who already know all this. It's pointed toward the public. And you got some heavy hitters on there. You got Marco Rubio putting his head on the block, going public and backing this thing up. And then you have these very highly qualified pilots and Chris Mellon. So I think it was a perfectly appropriate piece at the time, in relation to this report that we hope will come out. And I think it's the right step in the right direction at the right time.
All right, Cheryl Costa, you have a brand new book out regarding UFOs and statistics, and you will actually be appearing on Coast to Coast AM later on tonight. So we should plug that for you if anybody after this wants to listen to your incredible knowledge on this subject regarding UFOs and the statistics. For you, as one of the only real journalists that are covering this field of ufology, did 60 Minutes hit it out of the park with the public?
I think so. I really do, because if you saw the piece they did this morning, the other show that on CBS, it was fluff. It was all hedging their bets on, are these things really real? Ha ha ha. That was the attitude they had. I was expecting 60 Minutes to take this seriously. They had the thing, last year or so, or a year or two, whenever it was there with Bigelow. Okay. I wrote them several times and said, look, can we get a dialogue going here? And crickets, so I wasn't sure they were going to come out about this, but so much has come out recently. I think it was appropriate. I did not expect to get a call. We got the Omaha video footage showed up in the last 24 or 48 hours. I got a late night call from a journalist, CBS journalist, as a matter of fact, and wanted to know, well, our spheres seen very often? I said, they're the number 3 thing cited. 17,000 of them in the last 20 years, and 900 of them in 2020, and that was a low year. Yeah, they're seen. So there's interest. They're starting to talk. Yeah. So I think 60 Minutes did a good job for this first parlay out there to Mom and Pa America, who is still sipping the Kool-Aid from 1968 that these things aren't anything.
Yeah. I'll disagree. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'll just say I agree completely with what Cheryl just said. That was pretty much what I was going to say, Cheryl. Just that it was, I think really good for the public. It was too short. I agree with the other comments from, Bob and everyone. It was way too short. You wanted more. I went and looked at the extended, what they call the overtime piece, and there was more footage with the pilots. It was very good, and more with Chris Mellon that I thought was very good. And I think even took a harder, less skeptical tone in that piece. But I'm sure it was just a matter of, all of us on here, pretty much all of us have done lots of TV stuff. And that, they spend so much time with you and they edit it down to this big. It's just a matter of not enough time. But for what they did, I thought it was really well done. And you guys, I take out clients every night on my tours, and about 1 in 50, maybe 1 in 30 at best, know anything about the story, or even, if I say Tic Tac sighting or UAP or the Nimitz or anything. This is going to cause the awareness to go way up, I think, because it's going to have a life on the internet. It's going to be talked about and seen. And so I think for the awareness for the public, it was really good.
I tend to agree with you.
It's incumbent upon us to report that after this morning show on CBS Sunday morning, UFO Twitter went insane. It literally did. They were just really down on it. They were poo-pooing CBS, especially for the kind of somewhat flippant tone. It's good that the 60 Minutes tone was better, but I'm expecting a negative reaction in that there was not, other than the kind of things I mentioned, which are known to all of us. It's going to be poo-pooed because, as everyone has said, CBS 60 Minutes is one of the most popular news magazines in the world. It has millions of viewers, and what 1% of them will know the entire story, maybe less. So I think it was an important thing.
Don
Yeah,
Schmitt, let's get Don
Yeah,
Schmitt's
let's-
opinion in here because he
absolutely.
hasn't spoken yet. Don is very well known for his research into the Roswell incident back in 1947. He is very educated on the subject of UFOs. Don, when you took a look at this piece, how are you feeling afterwards?
Well, first of all, it was very reminiscent of so many of the other programs we've done in the past. When we did CBS 48 Hours, and for Dan Rather to make the very statement at the very end of the segment, and I will quote him, "Truly something extraordinary crashed outside of Roswell, New Mexico in July of 1947. And that's been a quote we've used for over 20 years. The fact that CBS, their number one reporter at that time, would be so bold as to make that type of pronouncement. So they always need to reel us back and bring us back to their reality, so to speak. I was very pleased, though, that they didn't play up the whole threat to national security. We had a meeting this past week, a number of us, with Luis Elizondo. And I keep pushing him, to become more educated on the history, because they keep focusing on the contemporary. And they're then setting themselves up for potentially a big fall, because a number of us have been as far as to this ball game before, going all the way back with Dr. Hynek, where we thought the announcement from Washington was inevitable, and we were all set for the press conference and the rug pulled up beneath us. The fact that they played up the reality of these unknown objects, the fact that they allowed and they did not edit out Elizondo talking about the G-forces and the speed, and as far as the classic, descriptions that we've all heard about lack of propulsion and wings and tail section and everything. So they drove home the point that we were potentially dealing with something non-conventional. And in the past, everything else, well, if it's involving national security, certainly, this is something that should involve everyone. We should all be concerned. And even, Marco Rubio, where he has said in the past that we should be more concerned if it isn't extraterrestrial, because then we're in trouble. Then we're dealing with someone else's technology, and we have a lot of catching up to do. So I was pleased overall that for once they did play up the possibility that we were dealing with some intelligence off the planet.
All right, Jeff Kingsbury, you've been silent so far right now, and thank you for that, Don. Really appreciate it. You have one of the many podcasts out there on the UFO subject, and I'm curious for you, my friend, as we bring you on in here now, when you look at the 60 Minutes article, was it more for the public or was it disappointing in your eyes?
I think everyone nailed it exactly. It was for the public. I think that we can, though it wasn't for us or the people that are already in studying this topic, I think you could still judge whether or not it was compelling, whether or not it was going to have some sort of influence on the public whatsoever. I don't personally think it will. That's because I'm kind of cynical over everything I hear from the military on this topic. But when it comes down to it, I think that at least they didn't talk about the threat narrative so heavily, like Lou has done so much recently on basically every podcast he's been on. I did think the adverts leading up to it sounded like an Office of PEO soldier trying to sell the FLIR camera, because it was the same clip of Graves saying over and over and over again, now that I got this technology, we can see these things. And, like the lean into the camera kind of zooms in at the end, the clip ends. It's like, okay, this amazing piece of technology is going to reveal this hidden adversary in our sky. Then the mention of, intrusion over nuclear facilities and endangering our pilots. It screamed to me that, but at least they left that out of most of it. Yeah, I think everyone's exactly dead on. It will probably raise some awareness, but I don't think it was super compelling.
See, I'm going to be the bad guy here for a little bit. I thought that this was great for those who may not be familiar with the topic. And I'm kind of caught in a little bit of a conundrum here, because I truly believe this was something that was, good for 60 Minutes to finally cover, but 3 years too late. They should have been covering it when the New York Times originally came out with this exact same story. And if not, they should have made it a little bit different, considering that recently, over the last couple of months, we've had the 2015 incident, and we've had the 2019 incident come out, which people are less familiar with. And I think they dropped the ball with that. I mean, kudos to them for picking up the topic. But do any of you feel, and please feel free to jump in, that it's great they covered the topic. It's great that they brought the legitimacy of true 60 Minutes journalism to this subject. However, they're 3 years behind. Did anybody have that concern? Cheryl, I saw you nodding.
Yeah, yeah, I'm concerned about that because you had Bigelow do the thing he did a couple of years ago. You had the New York Times in 2017. That was a big story. And they were strangely silent. I would have thought they would have jumped on that at the time. It was a major, major story, and they didn't touch it. And I think maybe they're CBS has always been very conservative in their journalism. So I think there's this sit back and see. One of the things I've seen batted around though also is that there's this attitude. There's been this attitude of saying, well, maybe we've been leapfrogged by one of our other adversaries here on this planet. You need only go back and check out a little line from Truman back in the 50s. No country on earth was capable of building these things. You know, that's nearly a quote, you know. So we've been dealing with things that have been outrunning our stuff since, you know, we had stuff in the air. Since World War II, they've been outrunning everything we've got in the air, but they're making it now only seem like it's a big deal now because we've been in the suspended animation of information since 1968.
Cheryl, can I ask you, in terms of, you did a lot of reporting and dealt with editorial boards and stuff. Did you ever get backed off, like in terms of what might have happened here was they had a lot of good stuff and the editors just say, no, we don't have really backup for this, take this out, take that out, that the editors may do a lot of damage in killing the good parts of the story. Did you have that, or were your editors open to go for it and say whatever you want to say?
238 columns. I only had one spiked, only one. And it had nothing to do with what I was saying about the UFOs. In fact, what was interesting with my editorial board, they were really quite interested. When I came to them and said, hey, I can show you all the congressional districts in New York State and the amount of UFOs they have. That's when they said, sure, we'll print that map in the paper, you know. So they were very interested in doing this. There was very little resistance upstairs. The only article they ever spiked was 3 years in. I wrote a snarky article about what disclosure might bring, you know, the aliens might be our pop darlings on Good Morning America, this sort of flavor, you know, and they spiked it. And I said, why? And they said, we feel you have too much gravitas now as a columnist. We can't have you writing comedy, you know, and who knew, you know. Right. But no, I had no trouble with the subject matter. They knew I had a policy of keeping it right down the middle, not too woo-woo, you know, and not too dismissive.
Okay.
That's why I want to be Cheryl when I grow up. Right down the middle, not too woo, data extraordinaire. See, I'm telling you. Don, I think you had your hand up and then followed by Bob.
Okay, as far as CBS being late for the dance, I think it's nothing. It's simply a case of it was a preemptive, you know, approach on their part. They wanted to be ahead of the game as far as before the congressional report from the Pentagon, and they can either say we told you so, or well, we've been on this all along. So you know, we're stepping up to the plate, so to speak. It's still the program is still better than if you consider what Peter Jennings did to us with that 2-hour primetime special on ABC a number of years ago, and it was a total hatchet job as far as at least what they did for our participation and what they did to Dr. Edgar Mitchell, for example. So at least they brought out heavy hitters tonight, and they certainly can speak well enough for themselves. And who's to question as far as you know, the level of these pilots and the responsibility that they have in just securing the national security of our country. And, you know, as we've often credited such people, what better as far as witnesses can we potentially have? Those then monitor as far as our sovereign airspace on a day-to-day basis. And when they see something that shouldn't be there, who possibly could question that? And so, you know, again, I think we had wonderful representation tonight. Yeah, it was late, but nonetheless, it's still, as far as was very pro in many respects.
Can I interject one point?
Oh, and I would like to too, but go ahead, Cheryl.
There is one thing I have noticed of late. I keep hearing some of these stories that are talking about this stuff keep saying, well, at least we've got credible witnesses with these Navy pilots. And I've had this concern that with this disclosure thing, we're all going to be left out in the cold. We're the experts here, but it's going to be, if we have congressional hearings, I'm concerned it's going to be swaggering pilots and a bunch of spooks.
May I respond, Nicole? That was precisely the meeting we had, Luis, this past week. The fact that for as much and as many of us who have offered and sent material to Rubio's committee, we had the same situation with the late Congressman Stephen Schiff with the General Accounting Office. They were not interested in speaking with witnesses nor researchers or investigators. And that's the problem with the military, and then / the journalists who cover military stories. That they have a totally different mindset. They look at civilian researchers as non-participants, unfortunately. And what we have to keep in mind, there's next to zero knowledge of this subject within the military. As far as the new recruits, the new officers, the new pilots, they know nothing of this subject. And worse than that, the journalists who are to be our watchdogs at the gate, they know nothing of this subject. That's why they still have this constant knee-jerk reaction. This is the silly season. How could you possibly be taking this serious? Because we don't. Well, it's because you people are the unwashed naive who could give a damn about what's really going on. You get your news marching orders each morning in the newsroom, and without that, without your talking points, you know nothing.
You hit the nail on the head, Don.
Absolutely, Don. You know, I want to say something, not so much because I agree completely with Don, but I can tell you from the clients I take on my tours, and it's, you know, it's 5 to 10 people every single night kind of thing, except for tonight, obviously. But I hear these are people with a real basic interest. They don't know very much. Like I said, it's 1 in 50 who know anything about this story. It was such a short piece. Sure, I could find faults in it, you know, but I just saying, see, in the UFO field, the research community, we're very jaded. We live, breathe, and eat this stuff and known it for a long time. And sometimes you got to go back and say, what is the public thinking, you know? And did it fall short in a lot of ways? Yes. But I think its strong point was it brought the public along. And you guys, again, like Donna said repeatedly, you look at how TV has dealt with this subject in the past. And we're having a sea change in the medias, and we can say they're at fault in so many ways, sure, but you can also turn and look at it and go, wait a second, we are getting serious media attention on this subject and on these Navy releases, on these pieces of footage. Every day, a friend of mine told me today, because I keep posting stuff on Twitter and you know, I'm trying to keep up on every once in a while. So a couple days go by, fall aside, and then I get involved in Twitter and Facebook and posting stuff. And a friend who follows my stuff on Facebook all the time said, how do you have the time to follow it? Because you're posting every development, every new piece of footage, every photo, every newscast, whatever. And I said, well, good question, because I really don't. And every once in a while I do, and then I fall behind, and then I do. But the point was, he was saying, gosh, stuff is coming out literally every day, and it's getting serious media attention now every day. So we can find lots of fault, but I think we've become jaded. I know people who come on my tours are going to be very excited by what they saw in 60 Minutes. And they're going to feel very vindicated, and they're going to say, oh, Melinda was right, because I've been updating my people coming on my tours on this current disclosure story. So I think you guys just be careful that as a UFO community, that we realize, what is the public view of this? And shows like this go a long ways to changing the public view. So there we go.
Let me drop in with a question for everybody. We see the numbers are 9 million that watched the show tonight. Do you think this helped? Because when we saw it coming, and I remember Dave telling me about this a couple of weeks ago, we thought it was the second coming of Jesus. I mean, the way people are talking about it, like 60 minutes, we're going to watch 60 minutes. Everybody tune in. It's like, so do you think this moved disclosure, the ball down the field? How much effect do you think this is going to have on this initiative by Lou Elizondo? And I can make a point that I had in my podcast today where I said, this is nothing new. This started in 2015 with Tom DeLonge and Hillary Clinton started talking about it. Podesta was talking about it. In 2016, I was told the big man is going on 60 Minutes. And I put that all in a book that was published in February of 2017. That was 8 months before Elizondo and all these guys came public. Semivan, I identified Semivan. So in 2016, they were already talking about this thing that the big man was going to go on 60 Minutes. And I believe they meant Semivan and not Elizondo. But so my question is, how much do you think this moved the ball down the field? Are they actually making some progress in terms of getting articles out and talking to major media? Because this seems to me a planned effort by somebody above Elizondo, that this is orchestrated, and they're moving this thing out to and how well a job are they doing based upon what we saw in the last, not just the 60 Minutes, but the last couple of articles that have come out.
Well, Grant, I'm gonna throw a little humor in on this, because Tom DeLonge on Twitter 4 hours ago posted this. For the record, at To the Stars Academy started all of this. I was surrounded by heroes that came out of the shadows of CIA, DOD, and Lockheed Martin Skunk Works. Together, we changed the world, and its effect, which will be felt as a downpour of reality-changing information for years to come. So we obviously know that Tom is taking full credit for this. And I say that quite frankly out of a little bit of a laughter here, because I don't think for a second, maybe it's just me, but I don't think for a second that Tom really set this up on his own. And the fact that, you know, since Luis Elizondo, Chris Millen and Steve Justice left the To the Stars Academy back in December, the fact that he's trying to get his name back in there for a quick second, I think is kind of funny.
Well, I'm just making the point that we have to give some credit to Tom DeLonge and to Hillary Clinton and John Podesta and Obama, because I think that's where it came from. These things do not fall out of the sky. Bob can maybe answer that. I mean, this is not something that is making it look like in the last 6 months, suddenly the American military found a religion and suddenly they're going to disclose. And I wrote this in a book in 2017. Exactly what has happened tonight is in my book in 2017. I said this was all going to happen and nobody believed it. And I kept getting told, because I had inside sources, and they kept saying, they're going to drop this thing. They're going to drop this thing. And then when Hillary lost the election, I said, okay, is it over? Is the big drop going to happen? And he said, no, it's still on. It's going to be bigger. There's a lot of people involved, and a number of high-level officials in the government are going to go public, and they're going to bring disclosure. That is exactly what has happened.
So I want to point out a couple of things. First of all, 9 million viewers is a typical CBS 60 Minutes number. They have about 9 or 10 million every week, but it's 9 or 10 million people that don't know a thing about UFOs. So that will move the needle. That's enough to move the needle. Okay, that's number one. Number two, 60 Minutes, talk to Rubio, talk to Elizondo, talk to Mellon, and they missed a very important development and point that happened in the last month. The single most important development at the official government level is that someone stirred their friggin' pot and got an inspector general to blow open the doors at the Pentagon. Now, most people do not understand what the Inspector General is. The Inspector General is a person that sits inside of every department, every agency inside the United States government, and they are completely independent of the direct political leadership inside there. They can open any door, they can go through every crack, they can have subpoena power, nobody can block them, and if they do block them, they can call the right person, and the President of the United States will order the door open if things work right. And at the end of the day, the President of the United States is about the only person who can fire one of these Inspector Generals. So whoever it is at the Pentagon and the DNI, going to them and saying, we don't think you're actually doing what you're supposed to. Where are you, Air Force, and so forth and so on. I think that is going to turn out to be the most important thing we have heard in the last month. So I can't wait for the effect.
Yeah, and so just to give people a heads up, that is our witness that's coming on. We'll be talking about that, and I think he's going to clarify there was actually 2 complaints. There's 2 investigations going on, Inspector General investigations. So he will talk about that. But I'm glad you pointed out the fact that the Inspector General is the powerful guy. It's not like you can play a little game. He can go where he wants. This is extremely powerful guy that is now in the game.
I want to remind people of one piece of history. In the last administration, the Inspector General in the Department of Justice was the one person they couldn't stomp on and stop them from cracking open doors. And the Inspector General and DOJ fought against and did not succumb to all the pressure to shut things down. Anyway.
Well, I can say this. I don't think Grant wants me to give it away. We didn't say his name yet, who our guest is later, correct, Grant? Okay.
Right.
But our guest coming on later is directly involved in that happening and is part of the cause of it. So he will cover that.
So in the next hour, we'll hopefully get to that. Cheryl, Don, and then Jeff. Let's go in that order.
Jeff keeps raising his hand.
Jeff's had his hand up for a while. Go, yeah. Jeff, and then come back to me, please.
I just don't. I know that you guys are going to kill me, and Grant's viewers are going to kill me. I'm going to be a complete heel here. I'm sorry. I really am. Okay, and I'm just this idea, and Bob, not to disagree with you completely, but I do. This idea that the Inspector General is somehow some being that's going to make sure everything goes legitimate. This is going to make some of you sick, but I would like you to recall the endless criminal cases that get swept under the rug in the military all the time, so the military doesn't lose face at all. They give 6 to 10 months of space to the unit commanders, which are 4 years out of college. Some knucklehead running an infantry unit or something. You know, someone beats up their wife and they sweep it under the table, and this happens on a daily basis. And when I was out of the military, I was working in TV production in New York. And I just happened to get a show came my way in development that was about the military. I thought, oh, this is going to be great. And guess what it was about? It was about the tens of thousands of cases of people left to their own devices when IG just said, you know what? I'd rather not bring any shame to the Marines or the Air Force or the Navy, whatever. I know you guys don't want to hear this stuff, but I don't get suspending disbelief, asking the same essential group for help on something that has been denying us all along. I'm sorry. I'm in the company of guys like Don Schmitt, and I feel like I'm never going to be heard from again after this.
I want to fire back. I want to fire back in disagreement. Okay, so let's have an argument. The United States Senate demanded they give an answer. That is not some guy who beat up his wife.
I would just say in pure numbers alone, it's so disturbing that you would then think, well, I don't know if this is a trustworthy source in general, if just the sheer abundance of criminal cases were, I don't even want to say it, it's disgusting. I've been witness to it.
A quick comment, not to interrupt Cheryl, but given again the ignorance of the Senate or anyone in Washington, they're going to accept anything as the truth if it's presented to them as the truth. It doesn't mean that it's going to be accurate. It doesn't mean that it's going to be anything close to the truth. It's going to be the truth as they define it.
True.
And having said what I said, I know that a bunch of my brothers are going to reach out to me and tear me apart now, but it's the truth. Sorry, guys. All right.
No,
I'll mute now.
Jeff, it's a valid point about cases like that. But like Bob said, maybe the difference is, you know, where the complaint is coming from. All of these things, everything remains. The task force getting the data, going to the DNI giving a report to Senate, and whether the Inspector General, the IG, it goes forward with the DOD. I mean, all these are things we're just like waiting with bated breath. Are they going to happen? I think a report will go from the DNI to Senate. Will they make a public report? They're saying they will. All these things remain, you know, so we're left just, and again, you know, it's like not only have we become jaded as researchers, but we also, no, Jeff, no, I'm agreeing with you in some ways, but we've also we've also become really jaded and for a good reason about trust in the media. We already discussed that, and trust of the government and everything, but we have to hold their feet to the fire, sure. And it's, you know, I just feel, and everyone else can join in on this, that the ball is way further down the field than I've been in this for 32 years. I know Don and Tom, and people are going to laugh at that because they probably have, you know, a good 20 years on top of me, even, you know, at least, right, Don? You know, but in 32 years, it's never moved this far along.
What was I? I was 5 years old. I know.
I do. That's why I said Don will just go, what, you know, but we've never been this far.
You have me 80 years old. My God.
I agree. The ball is rolling, and I don't want to sound like I have no hope whatsoever, because I do think at least we'll see some sort of scheme, and I'd be happy with just little tidbits from whatever classified report came out. So like Rubio comes out and gives us what he, you know, briefed. I'd be even happy with that, but doesn't mean I necessarily have hope.
Okay, let me make a point on this with the IG. It's not just the IG, but the guy who filed the complaints is a guy who's taken the government down a couple of times. They're not walking around. There's not going to be, you know, he knows how the game's played. He's taken on a lot of big times. And when I heard it, I just said, oh my God, we could actually win this thing. When I heard who was filing the complaints, you can, if you're an inspector general and nobody's putting your feet to the fire, but this was filed by somebody who knows how the game is played.
Okay, well, here's my thinking on these IG. When I saw that article come out, my spouse could hear me rant in a happy way. The lawyers are involved. Okay. And my thinking was this: when Lou Alessandro and I, when I interviewed him the first time, I've done it about 3 times. When I interviewed him the first time, one of the conversations we had was about the fact that he couldn't get things up to Secretary Mattis. He kept stopping in middle-level management someplace. There's a systemic problem. And in fact, one point I told him, I said, isn't that dereliction of duty? I mean, I was in this 2 services. I think that's dereliction of duty, you know. And then there's the other issue of when all the Navy pilots started dealing with this stuff on a routine basis in the last 10 or 15 years, none of the intelligence agencies wanted to touch it because of the stigma. If that had been a new Chinese jet, oh, they would have been all over this thing. So again, there was the stigma thing, but the duty still had to be accomplished. The research or whatever, the intel stuff had to be looked at, and it wasn't. There's dereliction of duty at a systemic level here. Okay. And I think the IG will get to that. I know they don't always get to all the domestic abuse cases, but they do go after systemic things. And I think this will be a good thing.
Cheryl, I'm with you in that someone I know involved who's going to be our guest, you know, and when he gets into it, he'll explain, I think, exactly what you were just saying and why they think it'll make a difference and what they're planning to do with it. I do know, I can say this, that there will be a meeting in DC with the IG over this next week. I've been told that. And again, he's going to come on, so I don't want to put words in his mouth, but Anyways, so you know, I know they'll take it as far as they can, and like Grant said, this is someone with a real track record for making a difference, you know.
And even you mentioned today this thing about, we'll hear about where they're trying to get the continuance, where they play these little games inside government. And when you get somebody who knows how the game is played, they can stop these little games. Because that's what we're hearing, is that they're going to try to get a continuance, which will take this thing off the table, and nothing's going to happen. It'll just disappear.
Well, this same person told me today that they think what we just witnessed on TV will go a long ways as far, and other media attention, as to be additional evidence that against the continuance. In other words, there's a ball moving forward and gaining speed, suggesting that they address all these things sooner rather than later, and it's gaining momentum in such a way it's starting to work against the continuance thing. When he comes on, Grant, remember to ask him that when he comes on. He'll talk about that.
We'll remember.
Yeah, about how this is thwarting continuance. So we'll ask him about that.
What I've been surprised in the last couple of days, I mean, I think I've learned more in the last couple of days than a long time, is that this thing is way more planned than I thought it was. That they actually, because you hear Lou talk about it, that we've got this thing going and we've got this plan and we're moving into second gear. I now believe that this is the fact, that they've got this thing well oiled. They know exactly where they're going. They've got a game plan, and they're carrying this thing out. And I'm very impressed with what they're doing. And I was sometimes one of their biggest skeptics as to whether they're going to get anything done or what the ultimate motive was. I'm much more positive about what Elizondo and these guys are up to after I heard in the last 24 or 48 hours of some of the stuff that has gone on.
Let's hear from Don, and then let's kick it back to Dave.
And then you can tell us what you think. You haven't talked yet.
Oh, I'm saving it for the very end.
Because I only have a short period of time yet, I want to just get to motive very quickly. And that we're all aware of the fact that each branch of the military is in competition with one another. And we all see who's been very surprisingly silent through all this, but the Air Force. And for having been the arbiters of the cover-up for the past 74 years, the Air Force could acknowledge this all tomorrow, and I still wouldn't believe a word they would say. Because let's just say their track record is as dismal as, you know, the Hillside Strangler. So saying that, if we recall when the Project Blue Book files were declassified during the Carter administration in 1977, and supposedly the Air Force was conducting this massive investigation as far as on the UFO phenomenon, government sponsored, for the past almost 20 years. And did any of us realize what was strangely missing? There were barely any Navy or Marine or Army cases in the entire report. It was almost 99% Air Force. So where are all the Navy cases? Mm-hmm. And I, for one, would like to believe that the Navy has finally, they're fed up with the Air Force speaking for them. That they finally have said, you people, you've been deceiving the world for 74 years. We're now about to tell our truth. We're now about to allow our pilots, as far as our crew, as far as our ship captains, we're going to allow them to speak for themselves and tell the world what they've been experiencing. Now, wouldn't that be refreshing? Yeah. Because, again, I guess we should almost anticipate that the Air Force may still play or pull some preemptive strike. That, we were just looking out for the American people and we just didn't want to damage, religion as they know it. And we were just maintaining national security. Well, that's a bunch of bull. We all know that. So what we all need to do is encourage the Navy like never before, because as we've often heard throughout our own research, that there's growing faction within specifically the Navy that wants this to all come out. They too want answers. And that's where we need to continue extending our own olive branch of cooperation. And I know forums such as this and all the people I'm sitting with this evening, you all agree with that.
I was delighted when I heard Navy intelligence was taking ownership of it.
Yes, me too.
Can I ask Don a question? Because you're leaving right away. Let me ask you a little bit of a controversial question. It's a little bit off topic. What do you think about Valet's latest book and this latest crash story? Have you got any opinion? Have you seen it or?
Yes, I've seen it. I'm aware of the case. I was approached by one of the two witnesses 25 years ago, and he gave me an entirely different account.
Okay.
And so it's been changed. Why? And I know that the piece of debris was thoroughly tested in Ohio. It turned out to be 100% terrestrial. And so it'd be like any other witness. You change your story, you've disqualified yourself.
Okay.
And so I question why Jacques,
Wait,
for never giving
Don,
us the time of, go ahead. Go ahead, Melinda.
Oh, sorry, Don. Oh, I apologize. My computer froze up a little bit there. Why do you think both Paula, but even more significantly, Valet has thrown in on this? What is Valet's interest and why this is a significant case?
Well, first of all, I don't think it's a significant case. I find.
But why would he? Is my question.
Right, I know. But I can assure you, I'm speaking to colleagues that I was with at Kufos, with Heineck for years, and they're all scratching their heads right now. Why is Jacques? Is he trying to, again, get into the limelight? Because I think we all would agree if there would be one scientist in the field that the Rubio committee, the Senate Intel Committee, would want to talk to, it would be the likes of a Jacques Vallée.
Do we think that Valet is squeaking out other information in this book, though? I mean, I'm thinking back to some posts from
Tom
Giuliano.
Clancy.
Like, is there about 900 words related to the Wilson documents in this latest book, though? Like, I think that's more interesting than another crash case at this point. So
I think Don's got a point. I wonder too, like why Valet was because Valet's got a lot to lose on this thing, because he's even admitting the piece is terrestrial. That has some other explanation, but that's why I wanted to ask you, because I was kind of, and I've heard the story. I'm kind of shocked that Jacques would put his career on the line for this. So I just wanted to get your opinion, because you have the, I mean, you as you pointed out, you've come across this story before, so.
Absolutely. And there too, where Jacques could jump on board with so many cases right now. I mean, there've been so many just profound incidents that he should be leading the charge. And, he's too often, been nowhere to be seen. Why now? I guess we'll find out in short order.
Thank you, Don.
right. And if we all recall, I mean, Valet on JRE, he was discussing a piece that, Grant, you brought up the book that it was written about, and he was talking about it like it was, brand new news, the piece that crashed in Washington or was spit out from Washington. And yeah.
And that piece was, he seems to go back to Battelle, which I guess Don can comment on. He was sort of hinting that Battelle was the place where all this stuff is done. And he seemed to indicate the 52 piece had gone there. And I had all the material, so I provided to Valet, because the Canadians had worked on the 52 piece as well.
Yes. And one of the things that Jacques may be opening himself up for is the fact that, for example, whenever we're asked, well, where do you believe the wreckage? Where do you believe the physical evidence is today? And I will very frankly state, it's not with the government. It's not with the military. It's all been assimilated into the private sector. I mean, Dwight Eisenhower was absolutely correct with his prediction of what we, needed to anticipate as far as the military-industrial complex. But we've had first-hand witnesses from Battelle, from RAND, from Hughes Aircraft, from General Electric, from Bureau of Standards, from Hughes Aircraft. I mean, Los Alamos, all talking about physical evidence. And the point being, these are all private corporations. Maybe this is also a way to try to, once again, in the case of the military / Navy, get a handle on the situation because they lost control of it decades ago. Maybe this is their way of once again asserting their authority on a subject that they should have the foremost, position on, and yet they lost it many years ago.
That kind of brings us back though real quick to that Office of PEO Soldier. These guys walk around like that movie with Robert Downey Jr., Iron Man, and the sidekick that's like the liaison. That's how they are in the military. They walk around with these huge accounts and they are like gods. They get untouchable. So I don't see anyone bullying these guys into making the military taking a stand over these third-party companies. I mean, but these people are too powerful. We call them daddy warbucks while we're there. Like working with certain systems.
Sure.
They fund all the scientists as well. It becomes like hush money.
Yep. I know
let me ask Don one more question. Again, not related to the 60 Minutes thing, but another sort of controversial thing that's come up that you had one of your authors that joined you, Tony Bergalia, and the medal controversy with DIA. Have you followed that story? What do you think about that?
Well, I know Tony Bergalia is standing as far as firm on his position that he asked specifically for documentation regarding physical evidence. And over the course of a couple of years of FOIA requests, that is what they finally responded to. And they specifically mentioned physical evidence. Now, I know John Greenwald and Kevin Randall and others have questioned whether it was reading something into the documents, but I feel that the onus is back on as far as the Pentagon, because they're the ones that now are having to apologize and explain why they even released such documents in the first place, that they acknowledged they were in possession of exotic materials that they were still working on. Well, okay, I suppose one can interpret that whichever side of the coin you happen to be on. But nonetheless, we know the military, they're usually very black and white. They don't answer any questions. They don't volunteer information. They only address that which they've been asked. And in this case, they did. So I will continue to encourage Tony to keep after this, because one has to always ask, what if they slipped? I mean, we're not dealing as far as with infallible individuals who just always cross every T and dot every I. They have, made mistakes throughout the years, and maybe this indeed was one of them.
Beautiful. Thanks.
Now, I have one little side note. I don't know much about Tony, but I have kind of given myself a crash course in some of the articles he's put out over the last years. And nitinol is what always jumps to my mind. Don, can you give us a few comments on nitinol and what that is and what people are looking into with it?
Well, as far as Grant mentioning even Battelle Institute, what was interesting is that when Tony, at our request, was asking specifically Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, where we can document, it's a matter of historic fact, because even the Pentagon put out the press release that the recovered wreckage from Roswell was being transferred to Wright Field at that time, Dayton, Ohio. So the request from Tony concerned where the wreckage went and if it stayed at Wright-Pat or if it went elsewhere. Well, then when Wright-Pat was suggesting, well, you need to check with Battelle. Battelle is just down the road in Columbus, so they thought being that they were in close alignment even at that time. And then Battelle was responding in like fashion. Well, ask Wright-Pat. Mm-hmm. Well, he went back and forth with them, and finally they discovered there was a progress report. But it was progress report number 2 that came out in 1949. Would we love to see the first one? Well, the second one described how Wright Pat, within weeks after Roswell, had requested that Battelle make a concerted effort to develop, and I will quote what they called it, self-healing metal. Well, what does that sound like? Sounds like memory material, doesn't it? But they called it self-healing metal. And so they came out as far as with their second progress report, with all of their failed attempts, their failed efforts. And then nitinol, which is a combination of nickel and titanium, was finally developed around in the mid-60s. And it's used mainly for surgical equipment, but you have to heat it and it becomes very pliable, becomes almost like taffy. And then you cool it down and it will assume its original shape and durableness, its hardness. So again, the question is this a result of the recovered material at Roswell, or is this just merely coincidence? And I'm sorry, and I will agree with Melinda as far as all the years, because you finally reach a point in your life that you start to discount coincidence, that after a while, everything is for a purpose. It's an agenda. And we're certainly seeing that today, that there's an agenda behind all this. And even tonight with 60 Minutes, there was an agenda as far as their involvement.
I agree, Don. And, you know, one of the things that we have been discussing quite frequently over the last 6 weeks on Spaced Out Radio, and Bob McGwier and I had a topic of conversation about this recently, is why now? Why all of a sudden, after 70 years of cover-ups, after 70 years of making people look like fools, putting people in psychiatric facilities, and even worse, making fun of people, why now? That is the most underrated question that we have going right now in this entire field when it comes to the UFO phenomena. Look, we could sit here, we could hear all of the military stories all we want, but still the fact is we know this story has been covered up for decades, and they have made us look like fools, people researching this field. So for the fact that the government is now trying to play the hero with some sort of agenda, I agree with you on that, because the way I look at it, and I could be totally wrong on this, but there is only two reasons that there is the reason why they are bringing this up right now. Pardon me. Okay, number one, we could go with Dr. Greer's fact of this could be some sort of fake alien invasion false flag. I don't buy that personally, but that's one. The other one is we have been contacted. They have given us a date, whoever they are, and now we have to set in the process to try and make sure we understand that we are prepared and the people of this planet are prepared for what could be coming within the next 5 years to 50 years. We don't know. Now, a lot of people will say, oh, Dave, that's just conjecture. But there's no sense, and this story makes no sense as to why now there is all of a sudden all of this reasoning that we have to be taking UFOs seriously.
And Dave, I would agree certainly as far as a false flag situation, and that would be strictly for a political agenda. Whereas if we're talking about anybody in this chat, you know, this room tonight, who believes that the government / military is doing this for the public's well-being, or more unlikely that they're doing it for ufology's well-being, we're kidding ourselves. That's where, and you're right, Dave, we have to question, why now? Why are they doing this? Because it is not for our agenda. It is their agenda.
I think it's because Mellon and Elizondo have checkmated DOD.
Good point, Tom. And on that note, everybody, I'd like to welcome to our discussion Mr. Danny Sheehan. and guest.
Well, I can tell you who the other guest is with him. That's Mark Sims. And Mark Sims is becoming very well known for leading large CE5 events. And I'll make a prediction right here. I think when it comes to CE5, Mark and the work that he's doing is, and I know Dan will sit there and he'll probably agree with me on this, is going to surpass what Greer does with it, because if I think Cheryl give a thumbs up, Cheryl.
You mean he's going to tell the truth?
Yeah, because this gentleman here, Mark Sims, is a really, really great guy. I got to know him when he was just here in Sedona. And so that's why I smiled so much. And what a surprise, Dan, that you brought him on with you. That was very, very cute. I love it. So great to see both of you. And of course, Dan Sheehan. Hopefully everyone, watching knows who he is. He did a wonderful presentation just recently for Jordan Peace and his Architects of a New Paradigm conference. And if you're not sure of Dan's whole background in the UFO subject, I highly recommend you watch his presentation for that conference, because it started with his involvement with the Carter administration, going forward into his involvement with Dr. John Mack, going forward into his involvement with Dr. Stephen Greer and the Disclosure Project, and then Stephen Bassett, and then all the way into what he's doing now, which is why I asked him, and Grant and I, asked him to come be a part of this panel today. So thank you. And it's such a pleasant surprise, Mark, that you're sitting there with them. I just can't believe it.
I want to point out one of the most important First Amendment cases in the entire history of the United States of America would not have happened without my hero, Danny Sheehan. It was amazing.
Thank you.
Welcome, Danny. Welcome, Mark.
Far out, you guys.
Beautiful introduction, Melinda.
Oh, thanks. Well, I'm just so thrilled to have them both here.
I know. I think we're all chomping at the bit. So let's just turn it over to
look
Danny
like they're joined
and
at the
Mark
hip
and
tonight.
Melinda.
You're right. Well, we were in the neighborhood. We figured that we would
Passing through.
We would stop in. This is the Mark's annual pilgrimage to come out here to Borrego Springs. And I have a very, very dear friend who's out here, one of our major supporters, who's 95 years old, and she comes out here once every month to do pottery and stuff. So I was coming out to see her, and Mark and I were in the neighborhood. So we said we'd jump up on the little chat room here, and it's I have as some of you know. Have been talking for some time about this because with Dr. John Mack. John and I were at Harvard trying to set up this new paradigm institute, this worldview institute, to try to talk about the fact that people who are coming at this issue of extraterrestrial intelligence and UFO phenomenon, et cetera, people tend to prism the whole experience through their own lenses of their worldview. And so therefore, the people who are authoritarians or militarists, they view them as this extraordinary threat. People who are sort of utopianists view them as sort of the George Adamski thing. They've all come from outer space to help us save ourselves from ourselves, and the scientific logical positivists are viewing them as this strange conundrum that's sort of somewhere between the borderline of the material realm and this other realm, whatever it is. So I've been just making myself available over this time since 1977, when I served as special counsel to Jimmy Carter's investigation of the UFOs and extraterrestrial intelligence with Marcia Schmitt at the Congressional Research Service. And I've been fortunate that because I'm, I don't know, maybe one of the few lawyers that pays as much attention to this as I do, I keep getting invited by people to represent them in different contexts, when they're afraid they're going to get threatened or their security clearance is going to get yanked away or whatever it is. And so I've been invited. I have to appear in front of the Inspector General of the Defense Department on Wednesday in Washington. over by Zoom now, representing Lou Elizondo, because he has filed an Inspector General complaint against the Department of Defense for holding back information about the UFO phenomenon. So I've been leaning on Lou and Chris Mellon to say in public, what I know in private and talking with them in representing Lou. Well, they didn't do that today on 60 Minutes. They did the same old shuffle of, who knows what they are, even to the point where, every third of the way through the show, at every single point, somebody would come on and say, they could be an awful threat. They could be who knows? They could be from China, and Marco Rubio, if they're from China or something, we should know about that. And so that whole thing is going on, as we all know, at a very low level of consciousness about this entire phenomenon. They're way below the horizon on this discussion. But it is certainly something like Melinda, when you said, what do you think? Did he hit a home run? I was saying it's more like a drag bunt. We've got a runner on first base finally. We got somebody on first base, but there's nobody's getting ready to drive him in. So with this idea of what are they all doing? What is it they're up to? What is the agenda that's going on now? We know perfectly well that when guys like Hal Puthoff and Kit Green and the other folks in Jim Sinovan, the people that are working at the To the Stars Academy, perfectly well that I've said it 1,000 times, they're clearly choreographing some type of, limited modified hangout, just like with Nixon, in the Watergate burglary, he was trying to figure out, let's give him a little something, but don't tell him what's really going on here. So what I'm doing is I'm behind the scenes basically with them, trying to persuade them to come forward and really lay it down, get into a major dialectical confrontation with the Defense Department. So what we've done is we've expanded the Inspector General investigation that Lou has initiated against them because he thought they were going to try to stop them from releasing the 60 Minutes thing, right? And so that we put together a complaint in the Inspector General's office, going after them for potentially retaliating against him. And then what we've done is we've expanded it into this other more general investigation to try to get the Defense Department's the Inspector General's office to come forward with what it is they really know about the UFO phenomenon. It's a whole separate Inspector General investigation. And so we've got one going on a whistleblower, if they think he's saying things that he shouldn't be saying. And then we've got one for retaliation, which is a separate division of the Inspector General's office, in case they're retaliating against him for saying something that he's perfectly authorized to say. And then we've got the other one going, a whole Inspector General's investigation of, is there something that the Defense Department is doing that's illegal by concealing all this information? So there's 3 major Inspector General investigations going right now, in addition to this bizarre report or whatever it is that's supposed to be getting handed in here in June. But it's clear that a potential report coming in from the UAP task force inside the Office of Naval Intelligence is supposed to be coming in June. I know from talking with Lou that this is the 3rd person. Well, when he quit as the head of ATIP, his deputy Jed came in to be the head of that, and then they closed it down, and then they had Jed become the head of this new thing inside the Office of Naval Intelligence, the UAP task force. And then Lou was having conversations with him because we were trying to get him to do what should be done, and so they removed him. And now there's this new guy who's in there, and we've been talking. We thought what he's getting ready to try to do is to ask for an extension of time. You gave us this deadline of having to get this in within 180 days, and we need more time. It's a typical classic foot dragging operation. if they can just delay it longer and hope the news cycle goes on to something else, like the Palestinians and the Israelis having a recent fight. They're hoping that people will forget about this. So what I'm hoping to do is, from the point of view of being asked to represent different people at different times about this whole issue, I've never changed my position. I think that we should talk about this completely and get everybody involved in talking about it. It's the most important issue that I've ever seen in the public issue area, and I've seen a few, as you know. And so, but this is the most important one of them all. And so, now I'm talking to guys. For example, we were talking with a fellow, a Central Intelligence Agency guy, who was in a division which is electronic intelligence of monitoring all kinds of electronic signals in and around the planet. And I mean, this guy's a full-time Central Intelligence Agency guy, and he says, well, of course, we know that the stuff that happened at Roswell, that really did happen. He's just sort of talking about it as sort of off the cuff. He says, of course, that all happened. And I figure that's progress. When you're getting people from inside the CIA sitting right there telling you, yes, sure, that happened, of course. It was because of Don's work, among others, making it just kind of irrefutable. And so that they finally give in when it becomes completely irrefutable. They'll acknowledge that it's true. But it's not clear to me yet exactly what it is or why it is that this drumbeat has started here. This whole kind of acceleration of talking about this issue, acknowledging that it's, quote, real. But I clearly don't go as far as Stephen Greer does, and say, well, they're obviously getting set to undertake some kind of a false flag operation, and so they're trying to beat the drums about this terrible threat. I don't think that's what's going on. But I don't know what's going on. And one of the most important principles that any of us can follow, as we all know, is don't pretend you know more than you know. Because more damage is done by people thinking they know what they're doing.
Really quick, excuse me, Dan, just to interrupt you just briefly, because Don Schmidt's got to go soon, and I know we just wanted to make sure we thanked Don for his participation. He was just texting that he was so glad to have heard you come on and say what you said. But Don, thank you for all your input and what you did, with us today. Oh, Don, your mic is off, Don. Don, your mic is off.
I'm sorry.
There we go.
There I am. No. Again, I'm very pleased at this announcement, Danny, because if anybody will get their attention in Washington, because like the old John Wayne comment, they'll know that our intentions are serious. And this is the ball game that we've all looked forward to, not watching, but playing in all these years. And so you're going to be the manager in all this. And as a result, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, Elizondo couldn't be in better hands, because for two reasons. Because you're as committed and devoted as anyone. But secondly, you also know the subject. You're going to know if they try to play you wrong.
That's right.
And you're going to catch them. And as a result, I mean, this is going to be a winning effort. So I applaud you. I wish you well. And certainly, if there's anything that I can do personally to assist, do not hesitate. So
far out. Absolutely, Don. It's a deal. It's a deal.
Well, thank you all. It was wonderful. We'll do it again. Look forward to it.
Please, Don, join us again.
Thank you, Don.
Anytime.
Bye, all.
And Don, so good to see you. I love you. So good to see you.
Thank you, Don.
Don and I go way back.
All the girls love Don.
Don and I go way
all
back.
All the ladies love Don.
I've been involved in a lot of research with Don, so we go way back.
Okay, whatever you call it.
Now, Dan, we'll come back to you, but since Mark Sims is right next to you, maybe move your camera over a little. Mark, did you see the TV show?
Yeah, we watched it together.
Okay, what was your thoughts on it, since you're sitting right there, and you guys, Mark Sims is going to become a bigger name very rapidly in this community. I have absolutely no doubt.
Thank you, Melinda. That's very kind of you to say. My thoughts, I was underwhelmed. It was just repackaged information. And I thought it was, as Danny so eloquently put it, a empty sandwich.
A nothing burger.
Or nothing burger. Yeah, he calls it a nothing
It
burger.
was a nothing burger.
And it's the only thing that was somewhat alarming is I felt that the interviewers kind of baited the pilots into saying, things like, it's a threat, it's a threat, it's a threat. This is, I just don't, I think it's pretty clear that they were, even in the recording of the video, they're not feeling threatened. They're amazed. There's something very exciting about what they're witnessing. And there's no threat whatsoever. At least that vibe doesn't come across in these videos where the pilots are being, recorded.
Whooping it up. Woo, look at that guy.
Woohoo!
Yeah.
Well, just look at that. So I just feel like there's a bit of a spin, and that to me is a little concerning.
It's concern to all of us.
Right. But and I don't know that it's a false flag potentially, but it certainly gives the military industrial complex ammo for getting more funding. Anywhere there's a potential threat, that gives them an excuse to raise money and get public support for that.
Exactly.
I
I saw this all along. Like Grant said, it's been planned out all along. And Dan, I'm sure you can address it even more. But I just kept seeing it as the big money grab, and once I think Grant, you brought this up recently in an interview or something where you were quoting me, quoting Jim Semivan, when I said, is there anything I could ever say that would blow this for you guys? And he said, yeah, don't blow the money, don't stop the money from coming. So
can we get Danny Sheehan to talk about
safe,
I was surprised when Danny talked about the fact that Lou Elizondo and Mellon don't buy into the threat. I was kind of surprised.
Oh yeah,
can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, no, it was interesting how it first started. It first started that Lou reached out to me because he was pissed off that they were saying that, look, this Lou Elizondo never had anything to do with the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Project, and besides, no such project ever really existed. That was their first kind of response. All this stuff about us investigating UFOs, that's not true. That had nothing to do with UFOs. And he was really pissed off about that. And he was taking the position that, well, that's calling me a liar, because I've gone forward with the To the Stars Academy, and I've talked about my position. So they're basically calling me a liar. And so I said to him, look, if that's the worst that happens, you ought to be lucky. It was like, I remember Oliver Stone said to me that he had me come to his home in Hollywood and look at the original editor's cut of the JFK story. And I was downstairs in his home waiting for him to come. We were going to watch this together. And he came in, he was all pissed off because Newsweek had a great big front cover that said, Oliver Stone's JFK, the twisted truth of JFK. And he said, look at these people, they're basically calling me a liar. And I said, what the fuck did you expect? I said, you accused everybody and their brother of killing the president. I said, what do you expect them to say? And so Lou was all upset. Oh, these people are calling me a liar. I said, what the fuck? They're all fucking liars. They've been lying for like 75 years. Why are you surprised? So this is how it started. And then, so I said, she said, what it is you want to say? What is it you want to say? Because you're going around pretending this is a threat isn't what you want to be saying. And he said, well, that's true. He said, because here's how he first came across it. When he was as the executive director of the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, he said the first thing he noticed is that none of the high-ranking military seemed to be acting like this was a threat of any kind. Oh yeah, it turned off our nuclear warheads, at the Minuteman sites, and it's been buzzing around our aircraft, but none of them are treating it like it's a threat. And he says he was kind of puzzled by that, because his normal instincts as a security officer, basically his hair was on fire to start with. But, oh shit, they're turning off our nuclear missiles. Oh, they're buzzing around our aircraft carriers. And he said, but every time he was talking about it, they was all, well, yeah, there they are again, And so he said, they clearly do not view this as a threat. And so I said to him, well, why do you think they think it's not a threat? And he said, well, because obviously the kind of technology that they've got, if they wanted to be a threat, they could be a serious threat. They can turn off our nuclear weapons. They can accelerate the speed of light, like right in front of us. He says, so obviously, there's nothing we can do to touch them. He says, so obviously, if they were going to be a threat, then they would have already really done something. So he says, so that too. So both the fact that the high-level military people are treating them like they're not a threat, and the fact is that if they were going to be a threat, they would have already done something. So he said, so they're not really a threat. So I said, well, he was still at the To the Stars Academy, right? I said, well, why do you guys keep on saying it? Why do you guys at the To the Stars Academy, every time anybody turns a camera on you, you start talking about them being a threat? And he said, well, it's because, that's how you can get people's attention. We can get people's attention because they're all worried about it being a threat. And I said, yeah, look, you go down that road, and you're going to get down that road too far, and you aren't going to be able to get off that road. You keep on flogging that dog, and you're going to get caught, on that. I said, so you got to stop that. You got to back up out of that and stop pretending this is a threat. And so that he started talking with the other people inside the To the Stars Academy, and with Chris Mellon, and Chris and he both started getting distressed over the fact that the To the Stars Academy people kept on telling them that they had to be presenting it like it's a potential threat, because they were trying to get Congress to have an investigation about it. And he said the way to get the Congress to have an investigation about it is to approach it like a threat, because the guys, the senators and Congress people are just like Pavlov's dog. You ring the bell at them, to raise funds, and they'll talk about a threat, whether it's the Russians or the Chinese. But Lou said, we know it's not the Russians or the Chinese. We know everything they've got. We've been spying on them. We know everything they've got. They don't got that. And so what Ike was driving with him is saying, look, well, have they briefed you in on what we've got? And he said, I think so, which told me right at the beginning, I don't think they have. I don't think they briefed him in on what it is we've really got. And I've seen all kinds of stuff now about what we got, which shocked the shit out of me. I didn't know they've got an aircraft. I was talking to Mark about. They got an aircraft that goes Mach 12. They've got an aircraft that goes Mach 12, and they showed me a picture of it, and it's got this bizarre technology where when I was talking with Mark, it starts going supersonic, and it's got this kind of shock waves all around it, and then they start these tubes come out of the top of it and start pumping some kind of a weird rare gas into their shock waves, and it causes explosions, which would propel the plane, and the thing goes at Mach 12, and it's got 120 nuclear tubes with the nuclear warheads, and they can deliver. Catch this! They can deliver 120 nuclear bombs across the surface of Russia in 2 minutes. At Mach 12, just across all the whole fucking place.
What the heck? That's what I'm going to say to that. What the heck?
Yeah. And so, I mean, and that's got nothing to do with the UFO technology. That's some technology that they figured out, and it wasn't using the UFO technology. And so I said, well, okay, that's interesting. So what do they got with the UFO technology? How well has that thing been developed? So I've now got the list of names of the people that have been working on it, and I'm going to find them out.
Dan, we discussed this earlier before you came on, about it going into private hands.
Oh,
And
yeah.
that those are
Absolutely.
aerospace
Yeah.
companies and
Yeah.
corporate companies.
It's all S4, it's Ben Rich, it's all that old story that you and I have spent 100 hours talking about
Yeah.
with Randy,
Yeah, yes.
So that's this, and I don't get the sense that Lou has been briefed in on that, and so that he genuinely, he's totally convinced it's not Russian, and he's totally convinced it's not Chinese, and he thinks that we don't have jack shit, really, and I know we do, and so I'm still in the process of trying to get him briefed in on what we really got, but it ain't this.
Can I just ask something real quick? Sorry to interrupt you. Are you actually saying that you're briefing Lou Elizondo on what the United States military has in its arsenal?
No, I was trying to find out from him whether he knew. I happen to have known. I was just trying to get him to tell me what it is he knew, about what this is. And it was clear to me he didn't know about these things. And so that what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to. It's a simple thing. I am trying to get Lou and Chris and other people. I haven't gotten to talk to Simivan yet, and I haven't talked to Hal Putoff.
Give me the questions, Dan. I'll run them by him.
Yeah, well, it's the first question to ask him is it true that you were the head of covert operations stateside? Because that's a criminal offense. That's a criminal offense, and you ought to be in fucking prison. I mean, if that's who he was.
I have every reason to believe the answer to that is yes.
Yeah. So you're in trouble right from the very beginning when you're talking with him about this stuff. So I'm anticipating that I'll get a call sooner or later, from him, eventually from Hal Putoff, and eventually from Kit Green and the people. And so what I'm trying to do is I'm just trying to stay completely honest, completely forthright. I know that you can't trust anybody in the CIA, no matter what anybody says. There's no such thing as a former CIA person. Just like there's no such thing as a former Marine. If you ever say, "Oh, you're a former Marine," they will say to you instantly, "There's no such thing as a former Marine. Semper Fi." And the same thing is true of the CIA person. And and so the question that you were one of the guys was raising is that the fact is there's another agenda. I guess it was Dave. There's another agenda here. There's no doubt at all that there's another agenda. The question is, whose agenda is it? Because it ain't Lou's and it isn't Chris's. And I believe that somebody inside the To the Stars Academy is involved in it. But I'm still not sure how far they've been briefed in on everything. I don't know yet.
Well, Dan, you go back to like the Wilson document and what it brings up, and that those guys back then when Eric Davis met with Wilson back then, they knew that stuff was going on then. And I think back to my friendship with Jack Houck, who was an early member of that group, and him telling me 30 years ago, he knew everything about this subject. So I think the core group, what we call in the UFO field, the aviary or the working group, that those guys know a lot more, an awful lot more. And some of them may be involved like Jack and others. I could name names, but I think they're much deeper involved. Even in my Mill Labs research, some of those people come up continually.
I think they know more. I think they know more, but I do not believe they are on the bigot list for the unacknowledged saps that are controlling the material.
Bob, I'll give you that. There's only one person that I think might cross the line there, but otherwise I might be akin to agree with you there.
Yeah, that's the question. Who are the ones that are up there? Say I've got this list now of reasonable suspects that I'm working my way through, because it turns out Ben Rich was on the list, and this is a list that was compiled when he was still alive. So he was one of them that was in there. And you remember now, Eric Davis is the one that told Rubio in the closed door session with the Senate Intelligence Committee that the people in my task force, the task force, the UAP task force now, the ONI, is that our people believe that these are off-world vehicles. I mean, that's what he said to him. You see, that's what's lit up. That's what's lit up Rubio. You know, it's all of his pretense of bullshitting about, oh, he thinks they might be Russian. He knows perfectly well they're not Russian. You know, but the bottom line is that the people believe they're off-world vehicles. That's what they believe. But you can't get them to even utter the thing of extraterrestrial life or extraterrestrial beings. They won't say it, but they do believe they're off-world vehicles. You know, and who else is driving off-world vehicles? It's not
Dave, I
us.
see your hand up. Go ahead.
Daniel, I'm curious your opinion on this, and I'd mentioned this earlier in the conversation about 40 minutes ago. But for you, being so involved with this topic for so many years, why now? Why now is it all important that we get this information out when for 70 years we've had cover-ups?
Well, well, it depends on who the we is you're talking about, Dave, is that there's an agenda going here on the part of the people that are in possession of the highest levels of information about all of this. There's some kind of an agenda going on now, starting to accelerate releasing some of the information. You know, what they've released so far is they're real. You know, they're not swamp gas. They're not reflections of, you know, searchlights from lighthouses off the clouds. You know, they're saying, okay, these are real. These are vehicles. They're using the term vehicles. They're under intelligent control. They're saying all these things. That's a lot more, as we all know. It's a lot more than they ever acknowledged. You know, at least since that golden age of UFOs. You know, in the late 50s. You know, when they were actually talking about these things. But the fact of the matter is, there's some agenda going now to lift up some discourse about this thing. As I said, I don't think it's because they're getting set to stage some sort of, you know, false flag attack. I don't know what the reason is, but as I say, you have to be careful about getting attached to thinking there's some reason why, the specific reason they're doing it, because you won't find out the real reason. So I don't know what the real reason is why this is happening all of a sudden, but there's something going on right now. But I also am quite confident that, you know, that in June you're not going to have the people in the know cough it up to the Senate Intelligence Committee. You know, I mean, because that would remain secret for probably 24 hours. You know, whatever it is they told the Senate Intelligence Committee. You know, so that isn't going to happen. But I don't know whatever it is they're going to say, whatever portions of anything they're going to say is part of the agenda. So we have to get a look at what it is they say. Now, if in fact they just postpone it and get a continuance, that's going to make it perfectly clear that we're dealing with, you know, with Charlie Brown in the football. You know, it's just a little more luring you in and getting you all excited and then pulling the football away and having us all bumping into each other again. You know, so we'll see. But I have no great expectations about this particular report that's going to be coming in here in June.
I think all it's going to be told is things that's happened recently that we know there have been these incidents around ships and nuclear facilities and the stuff that happened in the 70 years before now, where they learned everything that has these super secret things. We're not going to get told any of it because they committed too many crimes and too many civilly liable things to let that stuff out.
Yeah.
Well, and that's what I also wanted to throw in here too. I think all of us in the community have felt what we've seen on TV is a little lackluster, is definitely held back. And we keep questioning, what is it going to take to get like extreme public outcry to get to the bottom of this? And Danny, I'll pose this to you, and maybe Mark, you can jump in as well. When are we going to get a domestic case, like an experiencer case that is acknowledged, that's not military? And will that be the catalyst to get public outcry? I'm a small town girl. It seems like nobody gets excited until it affects small town America. Are we going to see that kind of coverage, or is something going to come out to where it's going to hit small town mid-America?
No.
No.
I have an opinion on that. I think potentially, yes. I think that if there were to be some extraordinary case of someone who's having a contact experience, who's willing to speak publicly about it and can demonstrate an ability to make contact on film, I think that could be compelling. And if it's presented in a way that's interesting, that becomes a human interest story, both from the human perspective, but also on this bigger question about who are they? And if it can be shown that bilateral contact can be made, and that there's information in this bilateral contact coming back, that could be very interesting, and go viral, so to speak. And I do think that there's something special about a story like this, that it could change the dynamics quite a bit. Because of course, if there were somebody who, fit the bill, the question then becomes, is this somebody who's been, blessed or, picked as a emissary for representing them? Because clearly the government isn't stepping up and fulfilling that role. So who's going to fill that role? And I think it will require somebody or a small group of people who are working together, who have proven that they've established contact and have gotten messages and can begin sharing these messages with the public. I think that could spin this in an interesting way that could change the game.
Well, all of which, of course, is derivative of the big elephant in the living room, and that is the ET beings themselves. Because it's perfectly obvious, if they wanted to have it revealed, they could do it, and they don't. And they're engaged in some other process that's going on here. And so the key for us to do is to figure out what that process is. Not spend so much of our time worrying about what the Defense Department's doing or what the CIA is doing or what some president is going to do when they get in there. The question is, what are the ET people going to be doing? What type of coordination do they have? If there's more than one planetary system that have their people coming here, what's their level of arrangement with each other? What are the protocols that they're actually pursuing? We need to know that. And that's why the real answer to this is citizen diplomacy. Is
there, not to cut you off, but you brought up protocols with the government and the military. Now that we're seeing this in the limelight and they're told they can report this without endangering their careers. Yeah. Is there some sort of first contact initiative going on? Is there any sort of training when we do interact with these things? Is it like, flash the lights like in Close Encounters and play the music? Like,
well, it doesn't appear yet. I just had a long conversation with the father of someone who's at the U.S. Air Force Academy, because I was kind of behind the scenes, kind of advising this person to, when they arrived at the Air Force Academy, to start talking about this, to say, look, we're the Air Force officers of the future. How about briefing us in on what we're supposed to be doing here? What kind of protocols we're going to go? And the Air Force Academy has got in the booklet that they hand out to the cadets when they first arrive. They've got a form for reporting UFO sightings, but they aren't talking about it. It's just there. And so what I do is I keep handing off information to this person to confront their professors and stuff at the Air Force Academy, right, to say, hey, how about this or how about that? So we've got all kind of channels open up, but I think they all pale in the face of the specific question of what the ET people themselves want to do here. Because whatever it is they want to do, they're calling the shots here. I mean, even what Mark was talking about is some team or some individual that could get sort of blessed to be kind of an emissary. That's still up to them to decide whether they want to do that. So we need to find out what it is they want and what it is they want us to do. And is it true that we among us who are utopians will say, oh, obviously they're waiting for us all to rise in our level of consciousness so that we are at the right vibrational frequency, so that we're in sympathetic resonance with their vibrational frequency, and then we'll have merited, citizenship in the Galactic Federation. We can go all on and on, right? But that's all just guesswork. You know, that's through our prism as utopianists. So that what we've got to do is we've got to find out what it is that they're up to. You know, how many of them are there? What type of coordination do they have among themselves? You know, are any of them more rogue than the others? Are there good ones and not so good ones? We need to find this out. You know, I spend my 50 years I've spent doing investigations, you know, of things that people consider to be a conspiracy, whether it's the people who killed Karen Silkwood, or how do you shut down the nuclear power plants, or how do you find out who's, you know, supplying weapons to the Contras, who's smuggling cocaine into the United States to buy weapons. This is what we do, you know, and so I'm turning my attention to this issue. And I'm trying to figure out, you know, it's not so much trying to figure out who the people are that are in charge in the secret realms here. It's the ET people. It's the ET people that are in charge of this thing. So what we have to do is open up a line of communication, just like I was talking with Mark earlier, just like when I was at Jesuit headquarters and was general counsel with the Jesuit office, you know, we reached out to Gorbachev. You know, Gorbachev was just the Secretary of Agriculture, you know, under Andropov. And we had direct face-to-face meetings with him to start negotiating about disassembling the nuclear warheads. You know, that's how perestroika and glasnost came about. You know, it's through citizen diplomacy. And so that's how we have to do it. I think we've got to, that's why the CE5 thing is so important, is, you know, is actually establishing direct communication with the extraterrestrial beings, and you know, in opening our heart to them and saying, look, you know, we're not totally dumb and naive. You know, don't think we're so stupid that we don't merit any kind of, you know, responsible communications from you. Let's have an intelligent conversation. There's an element within our human family. You know, we're perfectly cognizant of the shortcomings of our human family. You know, we're flawed ourselves. You know, but we want to have this conversation. So let's have the conversation. Tell us what you're up to. Tell us what
I think that's wonderful.
That's the way we got to do it.
It often makes me wonder too, if maybe there needs to be some sort of extension on humanity's behalf, not just a curiosity, but I often wonder, like, do we need to give them some sort of protection to be able to acknowledge and start this conversation? Do we need to put it down on a piece of paper and announce it to the galaxy? If you make contact, we will not shoot at you and we will let you leave the planet. Like, I don't know.
They know pretty much. I mean, don't underestimate the people.
Yeah.
They have a pretty good idea what we're up to. You know,
hang on, Dan and all. It looked earlier. Jeff, did you have your hand up earlier? And same with Cheryl. Both of you. I thought
Grant too.
Oh, Grant. Okay.
I'll
So
let
Jeff,
Grant
I'll
go
start
first,
with you.
please.
Okay.
Oh,
okay.
Grant, please go.
But Jeff, if you had a question, don't let us forget you. Okay.
Okay. My question is actually maybe the question Jeff's going to ask, because Jeff, before you came on, Danny, they were talking about the Inspector General able to shuffle stuff under the table and not being up and level with some cases. So you're up against the Inspector General. You've been up against Harvard University and Oliver North and all these guys. You know all the game. What's your prospect? Do you think you can keep the Inspector General on course? And do you have any ability to force the issue and make him do the job the way he's supposed to do it?
I hope. I'm not sure yet. I'm going to, with the fellow that we're dealing with is named Stephen Johnson. Dr. Stephen Johnson. He is the director of whistleblower and retaliation investigations for the Inspector General. And then there's this other woman that is in charge of recrimination, which is some sort of a different category. And then there's a third one I haven't gotten to talk to yet, that's in charge of this whole general investigation inside the DOD about what they know about UFOs and what are the protocols that are being used to conceal it, and are they legal? You know, there's 3 different investigations going on. What I'm assuming that what I ended up having to do is talk to the Inspector General himself, you know, because there are these other lieutenants that are having jurisdiction here. But what we've got to do is we've got to get the pressure on Susan Go, at least. She's the DOD person who's blocking the information. She's the one putting out all these lies about, you know, there's no such thing as ATIP, and, you know, we aren't doing this anymore, you know, that thing. So what I've got to do is find out who I'm dealing with in the Inspector General's office. You know, that I've never met a government lawyer that I trusted. Because they've got this other agenda, as you were talking about. They are people under authority, and they've got instructions, and they view themselves as being responsible for protecting the institution itself. And as I think it was Dave was saying, anybody who thinks that they're actually engaged in trying to protect the public interest ought to have their head examined. So that that's what John Mack used to say. But the bottom line is, I've got to try to find out who these people are, how honest they are, how seriously they take their job, how fascinated are they going to become about this subject. I mean, any human being that has a heartbeat, basically when this information starts getting in front of them, they start saying, oh shit, here I am. I'm like I'm in a movie here. Here, this is the big issue. And all of a sudden it's come onto my table. What am I going to do about this? Am I going to just, salute and the flag and, walk, at attention in front of whoever's telling me what to do? Or am I going to actually have a little bit of leeway here to try to find out what's really going on? Am I going to exercise whatever degree of discretion I've got to try to do something that, will merit my respect with my grandchildren? So I have to find this out. I don't know yet, but I'm gonna know Wednesday, because I'm gonna get to talk with Stephen Johnson and find out what he's about. And I'm gonna get to talk to the other IG. So I'll know by the end of the month, some of what we're dealing with here.
You think this is going to open the doorway at all, sir, to like some of the other FOIA, like for instance, Lou's cohort there, Sean Cahill, who was going to be on here tonight, actually said just the other day, he tweeted, it's been 600 days since we discovered that they were diverting UAP FOIA requests when Lou and those guys put it. So like, are this going to open the doorway? Because we know like guys like John Greenwald have a paper trail 100 miles long of the same thing happening for the last 30 years.
Yeah. No, what's more shocking is the fact that they release anything at all through FOIA. I mean, that Richard Dolan has gotten lots and lots of stuff through his FOIA actions, and letters and everything. And so that they obviously view the FOIA process as some portion of whatever that agenda is they've got, of kind of feathering out little pieces of information. But, the FOIA, the Freedom of Information Act, has got 22 specific exceptions. For example, in the letter they sent back to us when we filed the IG complaint for Lou, they sent us back this Privacy Act thing that says, that even the things that aren't covered by national security are covered by the Privacy Act. And so anybody who's involved in this process, is not supposed to tell anybody about it. Fuck you. Who do you think you're talking to here? I mean, that's the same thing they said at Harvard University. Well, no, this is all very private. Fuck you at private. I mean, you're sticking it up poor John's butt here, and he's supposed to, bend over and hold his ankles. I said, fuck you guys. We're going to tell people what's going on. So we'll tell you the truth. We'll bring witnesses in. We'll do all this kind of stuff. But I mean, who the hell do you think you're talking to here? I mean, so that's the position we have to take with them without being overly insulting. But which may not be that easy. But we'll see what's going to happen. I always start out assuming that that they're good people and they've gotten themselves into this position, and they may be a little bit toady because they're inside an institution like that. But we'll see what's going to happen here. We'll see what's going to happen.
I was just laughing then because I was thinking, yeah, Dan, you might want to dial back.
Yeah. No, I know.
Scolding them. Yeah.
They're probably expecting something.
Jeff, did he answer your question, or did you have anything else?
I actually was going to ask, so do you have anything that you'd like to say working with, like on the disclosure project versus now, maybe lessons you've learned, things you're going to avoid, things you might never bring up again, that type of thing?
No. I can still never figure out to this day why Marcia Schmitt is so pissed off, from the way back in 1977 when we were working on these reports for Jimmy Carter. She just refuses to talk to anybody about anything. Like she pretends like she was never even involved in any of that stuff. I think she's overdone, whatever she thinks is the secret nature of the investigation we were supposed to be doing, and that she got offended at the fact that anybody would talk about it at all. But
yes, I actually wrote her a letter when I was living in Washington, and she never replied.
Oh no, complete black hole with Marcia. She will not talk to anybody. If you walk into her office and try to start talking to her, she'll get right up and walk out of the office. Like as if she never. Well, after she ran the investigation for the Carter administration, she was the head of the Science and Technology Division of the Congressional Research Service for the Library of Congress. That's where she was. But because she was so secretive about what it is that we were all doing together, the Reagan administration made her the head of the Citizens Advisory Commission on U.S. space policy. So she saw that she's rewarded for just being completely secretive about this stuff. And needs to say, I wasn't. And so she's really upset about that, I can tell. But the fact is, she just gets up and walks out of the room if anybody even asks her about any of this stuff at all. And I don't know, I mean, I could have been more diplomatic about it, about telling everybody about whatever I knew about this stuff, like the stuff, it was under her aegis that I got to see the classified sections of Project Blue Book. I mean, I told everybody as fast as I could what I'd seen. Holy shit, look what I saw. So I mean, and they know that's going to be the way I am. I'm not into any kind of big secret stuff. Bob Fink was the investigator for Bella Abzug. Bella was the congresswoman from New York that was the chairperson of the Individual Rights Subcommittee of the House Judiciary Committee when they were doing the Church Committee investigations of the CIA, and they had the House side, it was called the Pike Committee under Otis Pike, and Bob Fink got seconded by Bella Abzug to be one of the investigators for that, and he said to me, Danny, don't ever take a security oath. He said, look, I know you can find out anything that you would be able to find out with a security clearance. You can find it out anyhow. So don't ever take a security clearance, and then they can never say that you violated your security clearance. So I'm never going to take a security clearance on anything. They could offer to sit me down with an ET to interview them, and I'm not going to take a security oath. So I'll tell people whatever I know.
Well, we appreciate that very much. Does anybody else have a question for either Dan or Mark or anyone else on the panel for that matter?
Great. I have one. In terms of, Danny, I heard you talking about the importance of the nuclear weapons. Can you talk about that and the sort of the message coming from the ET and what they know about that?
Oh yeah. It's the two main messages every time. You talk to Barbara Lamb, you talk to anybody, John Mack, anybody who's had all kinds of interviews of the contactees. And the thing that they talk about is you've got to get rid of the nuclear weapons. You've got to get rid of the nuclear weapons. You can't have these nuclear weapons. You detonate these things and it's having repercussions all throughout the galaxy. You got to stop doing this. And also you got to stop what they call polluting your planet. You're polluting your planet. It's going to destroy the ecological system of your planet. These are the two things over and over and over again. And that's why I said when I ended up, it was back in 1994, John and I were going to be talking at the MUFON conference down in Orange County. It turned out that everybody was there. Stanton Friedman was there, and Bud Hopkins was there, and Linda Moulton Howe was there, and Stephen Greer was there. A whole bunch of people that were, and so we're all in the green room together, right? And so I stood up and I said, "Holy shit! Look at here, we're all in one place." I said, "This is really interesting." I said, "Look at that all the work that I've ever done out in the regular world is you have to build coalitions. You have to get people who have a common interest with you. And the problem with the UFO movement is it's all by itself. It's this kind of thing that's completely sui generis, and it doesn't have connections to anybody else. You got to reach out and establish connections with the anti-nuclear weapons people and with the environmental people that are trying to stop climate change." And I was talking about this back in 1994. That's what we have to do. These two issues that the ET people keep talking about over and over and over again, we've got to get people in the environmental movement, in this huge movement now to try to stop global climate change, to understand. That's why I think that the Ariel movie that's going to be coming out, that Randy's going to be doing with the Ariel movie is going to be really, really important. Because all the people that look at those little kids and see all the pictures that they drew about what they were being told by the ETs.
Right.
Like James's movie,
nobody's going to doubt that. Everybody's going to say,
Phenomenon, James Fox's movie.
Well,
now, Dan,
everybody let me butt in real quick,
she has to get going.
Yeah, Cheryl, thank you so much for joining us tonight, and good luck on Coast to Coast tonight. I think we'll be jumping off of here to jump on and listen to you.
Everybody out there listening, listen to Coast tonight. Cheryl Costa is the guest. And so we're going to be there talking about her new book. Yay. Hold up your new book. You got one there? Hold it up. Cheryl and her part. Oh, no, okay. That's all right. But that's all right. Everybody listen to Coast. Cheryl's going to talk all about her book. Thank you, Cheryl, for being with us.
Thank you, Cheryl. Thank you.
I have a question, a comment for that. So recently, Dave Scott and I, on the Science Bob segment on his radio show, interviewed Jim Goodall, the SR-71 fame. So Jim made an astounding statement, and there may be some implication, or you may have some indication whether or not his statement was full of crap or whether it's true, because it has massive implications. He was regularly connected and involved with the Donald Trump administration and campaign. And he came on the show and told us that after Lou Dobbs and Don Jr. talked to Donald, he declassified the UFO stuff. And everything kind of went quiet for a while. And then I think, so the thing that I was thinking about, if that happened, let's suppose it happened, what would they do? They would go into a delaying action, hoping that when Biden got sworn into office, he would undo it. So you of all people would know how to go about finding out if that happened and what the implications are. Well, because that would open the door.
I'll talk to Jim. I just saw Jim 2 weekends ago, and he didn't say anything like that to me. I was talking to him about all this stuff. He never said a word to me about that. Yeah,
I'm just hearing what he said on the show, and it would really be interesting.
Well, I'll ask him.
If it were true. Good.
I've got his cell phone, and I'll call him and see what he's talking about.
Yep.
Yeah, that'd be very interesting.
One thing I'd like to point out, that there was one thing in the program tonight on 60 Minutes that surprised me. It was a little piece, the young pilot who was interviewed, and he's on the East Coast. He made a statement that for the past 2 years, I believe, that they see these things daily.
Yeah.
And I have not.
Lieutenant Graves.
Okay.
Graves,
My question is, has anybody tried reaching out to these vehicles if they're there so persistently to communicate with them?
Well,
C5's hard at 400 miles an hour.
Oh no, but you can use a radio.
Sorry, I'm just
right.
So stick a sign in your window.
Yeah.
No, Mark, but that was the point I was trying to make. Is there some sort of, first contact protocol when they do interact with these things in the air, other than just sending everybody on high alert and trying to record data? Do you pull out Greer's C5 app and start playing the tones like as the jet flies by?
My guess is with the military, the answer is no.
Right.
Well, I would not assume that. If I had been interviewing those pilots, I would ask these kind of questions, right? I mean, it seems obvious, self-evident that this is the first thing that you would try to do if these were persistent encounters. And no one mentions
what frequency will you dial up on your transmitter and transmit on?
These are
frequency hopping. It's not hard to know which channel they're on.
These are frequency hopping radios.
Just as simple though. That could be just something as simple as thinking happy thoughts though. Yeah. Like, hey, I'm not here to hurt you.
I was just gonna say, Nicole, it's consciousness. Grant,
as you have a bunch of warheads under your arms.
Yeah, right.
That's okay.
This is the frequency you
use.
use.
There we go. Yeah.
All right, there it is.
The military radios don't use a single frequency. They're frequency hopping. They're millions of.
They can switch to that frequency.
They're not supposed to have cell phones in the cockpits either. So
I have a question. I'm not to be a. Oh my God, I'm such a heel. Do you know that Tyler Rogoway ran an article 3 days ago that goes right along with what Graves said. He said that the pilots are reporting enemy drones and observation, simple technology every single day in the Atlantic, and it's being disguised as UFOs, and we don't know why. And I know Tyler Ogway is pretty accurate most times, even though he is a military correspondent on tech and stuff. But I think the coincidence there is pretty interesting. If you're seeing UFOs every single day nonstop, I tend to believe they're not UFOs. I'm an experiencer myself. I know I try to compare it to myself, but the idea there's so many UFOs over the ocean, they're spread out across the entirety of all training.
No, I think it makes sense.
Where we know the military is spying in those areas to see what our military is doing. It's
Jeff, I need to take you on my UFO sighting tour here in
Melinda,
Sedona, where you realized we see 40 or 50 UFOs every night, things that stop, turn, change direction, fly in formations. Mark's seen it with me. Anyone who's done.
I have no doubt that there is some really impressive stuff in the sky. I am a black triangle witness myself, up close, right over our head, my mother and I. But I the stuff they're reporting matches.
Seen it, and they're not all drones, because drones, and they're not drones.
That's right. They're not drones. The
minute.
Vast majority of them are not drones, because that would be very unpractical for the Chinese or the Russians to send out.
Yeah.
They're most likely things that are filled with a gas, and they're floating with something.
If the UFOs are coming over Sedona that much and coming over my unimportant little tour, then obviously that they would be coming over the military, because they're concerned, particularly since a lot of those ships they're coming over have nuclear weapons on them and have nuclear propulsion systems. I can see why they might have an interest in that, and they're checking them out constantly. I don't have any problem with that.
Okay, I want to fire back in one slightly different direction. All of the 2019 stuff that recently got reported was over destroyers that have neither nuclear weapons on them when they're training, and they're not nuclear powered. So nuclear had nothing to do with that site.
And again, I just want to say that I am fully aware the phenomenon is real. Whether you guys want to believe it's one phenomenon or multiple different things out there, conscious agents, whatever it is, I know it's real. But the idea that they're spotted so easily and so frequently, and we're presented with essentially nothing. 2017 didn't change anything for me or anyone I know. I don't know. I don't get I don't know. I don't. But seeing them every single day nonstop seems outrageous to me.
Hang on, Jeff. My point is, we see them every night on my tour. The military could be seeing them every day too. That was my point.
Okay. Can I ask a question of Danny? Danny, you've had interactions with Gorbachev. You've been in this field a long time. What people always talk about the evil Russians and the Chinese. Do you have any idea how they're dealing with this problem in Russia or China?
That it was, as I said, that the first time I had a private conversation with Gorbachev, I asked him about it, and what he did is he just took out a little notepad out of his pocket and he wrote down a telephone number and handed it to me, and so I went and called up the number, and it was a personal friend of his in Russia, and he was the editor of the only Hebrew language newspaper in Russia, and he laughed when I called him, and I said, Nicole gave me this number and said I should call you because I asked him about the UFO, and he told me the story about this big UFO incident that happened outside of Moscow a number of years earlier, where it was like a Sunday morning, and there were all kinds of people, hundreds of people running around in this big public area, a park or something, and a UFO came, and it sent this big beam of light down, and this one guy walked out like right out of War of the Worlds movie, he walked out to it like this with his hands up like this, and the beam of light covered him all up, and he just disappeared. And the UFO hovered around there, and there were hundreds of people saw it, and they went scrambling, running around trying to find telephones to call everybody they knew, and then it flew away. And so that he got the report, he said, from their newspaper, and he sent one of their reporters out there right away, lickety split, jump in the car, go out there, talk to anybody you can see. So he gets out there and he's talking to all these people. They're trying to talk about what they saw, and the thing comes back when he was there. And it came back and it hovered and the big light came out. And then the guy was all of a sudden standing there. And the guy didn't remember anything, didn't know anything had happened. He just was kind of baffled. And this guy wrote the story about it and it was in the newspaper. And he told me about it, and that was all. And I knew Dr. Zhenzhou Jing. Dr. Zhenzhou Jing was the head of the Science and Technology Division of the Chinese Academy of Social Science when I was over there at the State of the World Forum. So I was over there talking with her, and they were doing experiments in anti-gravity at the Science and Technology Committee, and also in psychokinetics, and also telepathy. That's what they were working on, and they were trying to figure out an alternative energy source at that point. And so that's why they were interested in the UFOs, because they were trying to figure out what their energy source was. And I didn't talk with her much after that. She wanted me to try to get a hold of Ted Turner because she knew that I knew him, and I knew George E. Zimmer, the guy that owns all the Men's Warehouses. And she was trying to get them to chip in to finance putting together this study. And I kept saying, why don't you have the Chinese government pay for it? And she didn't trust them. She didn't trust the Chinese Communist Party. She didn't like the Chinese Communist Party, and she didn't want to. I guess I shouldn't say this about her, but she didn't trust them, and so she was trying to get it funded privately, which says something to you, because that's kind of the same thing that happened here. It happened in the United States. Is that these corporations, the Skunk Works and Lockheed Martin and Rockwell and all these people. There's no doubt at all that these people are up to their elbows in this thing. And they've got all kinds of access to the technology. They've been developing the technology, and they're outside of the normal channels of the chain of command. Which you can say good things and bad things about that, but it's peculiar. I mean, it's definitely peculiar to have people who are in the private industry making money for shareholders, to have a monopoly control over this particular technology, and they're the ones that are insisting about keeping everything super secret, because they've got proprietary interests in this technology. And so that the general officers, they don't know when they're told something is top secret, they don't know where it comes from. They don't know how high up it goes, where the orders have come to keep it secret, but they probably run right back to those corporations who are protecting their proprietary interest, and it's totally contrary to their national interests. So, that this is a peculiar morass. It's not necessarily much more complicated than trying to figure out who killed Karen Silkwood, at the private nuclear plant, or who's smuggling the cocaine, But what it takes is a concentrated effort, professional, concentrated effort. Not wild speculation. About it's going to be some kind of a false flag attack, or or they're coming here to eat our children, or any of that stuff. You have to go one step at a time and figure this thing out. And that's why Mark and I are here, is we're trying to talk about how citizens can responsibly, reach out to talk with the beings themselves to find out what they want. Because I mean, they're at a whole other pay grade above whoever it is that thinks they're in charge down here on the planet. I mean, these are the people that are in charge of deciding how much we're going to know. True. So we're trying to coax them into telling us more.
Beautiful. Thanks.
I want to know if anybody on the panel has seen in the last month several strange tweets that came out of the Chinese National Space Agency about extraterrestrial intelligent life in our solar system that's not human. There's like 4 or 5 tweets that came from them. I keep responding going, why don't you have a damn press conference and tell us about it? Has anybody seen this? Oh, it's really strange. I don't know
Bob,
what's going
send them the next Zoom link.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, if they would, but of course they don't identify themselves. They're just CNSA press people that have been told to put this tweet out, and who knows what it means.
Haven't seen it at all.
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
it's on CNSA. You can
April
go look.
24th, 2021, with great ceremony, we announced the confirmation of intelligent life. End of sentence. That's it.
Oh, okay. There are 4 more like that.
Come on, the Chinese are better at ceremony than that. You know,
Right.
we're all the flags and the 10,000 people all dancing in order here. Come on now.
That'll come next week. They're still getting the food ready.
That's right.
Tom
It's entertaining.
and Dave, you guys have been really quiet. Is there anything you guys want to bring up at this point? We might be starting to wind down.
Well, I don't want to rain on this parade, but
Go
we're seeing
for
some
it.
momentum here. We're seeing some momentum here with the stories that have come out and with 60 Minutes and all that. And for the group or the faction, whoever they are, that want to keep this silent, that's all the more reason for them to slow this down and throw a monkey wrench into it. Because if we keep developing momentum, whoever these people are that don't want this information out, they're going to lose control of the situation. And it seems to me that they're powerful enough that they're not going to let that happen.
Well, we're going to
They
see.
used to be, or they used to be powerful enough.
Is this a case of is this possible, like, you know, corporations keep like corporate fraud retainer on the side? They always have like $50 million because they know they're going to break the rules. Is this a situation where there's already measures in place for gentlemen like you, Mr. Sheehan, coming down the line? Is there already measures in place to prevent you from getting any information? Do you think is it possible?
Well, they've got 236 new federal judges that have all been appointed. You know, all scions of the Federalist Society. You know, you aren't going to get shit in discovery. You know, I mean, you can file cases until you're blue in the face, and you aren't going to get anybody. You know, they're not going to give you discovery about this stuff. You may not get bounced out on a 12B6 ruling. You know that the allegations just on their face, you know, even if they're proven, don't give you any cause of action. You got to figure out what the cause of action would be. But even if you get through a 12B6, you know, they're not going to give you discovery. You know, these judges are just going to ignore all your motions to compel and everything else. So I don't believe that the legal system is really very viable right now, you know, to get anything done by way of progressive change at all. And I've been at this for 50 years, and we've made more progress than most people, you know, by going through the judicial system. But I don't hold out any reasonable prospects for it right now. I mean, if in fact the Democrats were to bite the bullet and appoint 4 new justices to the Supreme Court, so that you've got a court up above there that is at least a neoliberal court instead of a reactionary court. You know, that there may be some chances, even though you'd have to fight your way through all the district court judges and courts of appeals to get to them. But until something dramatic happens like that, I wouldn't hold out any real hope for going through litigation, much less the Administrative Procedures Act, trying to beat up on some administrative agency because they're violating all the rules. You know, we're in a very difficult time right now. And so that, again, echoing the same concerns, Rob, I don't know why this new phenomenon is starting. I don't place any credibility, at least at this point, in the fact that Donald Trump, you know, declassified all this stuff. I mean, he would have been all over Twitter with that if he had done something like that. I mean,
He was banned.
Well, no, I mean,
He has other ways.
Yeah.
His daughter will tweet for him.
He'd be standing on the rooftops dropping.
But Danny, we can't even get the Kennedy assassination material declassified.
I know.
It's supposed to have been released already.
Well, there's a whole bunch of more documents that are supposed to come out this fall. But I don't know whether they're going to or not, but we'll see. We'll see about those.
Yeah. And I have a question for everyone. What do we think is going to happen next? Obviously, in the last couple of days, Jeremy Corbell, assisted by George Knapp, released another piece of footage. Obviously, he claims that this is coming. I don't know if anyone here knows more about it, that it's coming from connections he had with the task force. So apparently someone with the task force is providing information to Corbell, because I mean, that was pretty dramatic footage, because with all the recording, you know, sound recording and everything with it, there's a lot of detail. There's a great video of George Knapp and Jeremy Corbell breaking down all the technical data and that, and he says he's going to get more, or he has more, or he's about to get more. I'm starting to believe Jeremy every time he says I'm going to release something else or I'm getting more. he follows through with that. So I think we're going to get more there. Meanwhile, that goes on throughout, you know, the end of this month. It's coming up on the end of here as it is of
June.
May, you know, so then we're going to June, throughout June. And then in the end of June, if the DNI provides, you know, a report to the Senate, which do we have any reason to really think they're not? I mean, everything suggests that that's on track to happen. Dan, you might know more about that.
Well, I got a promised call back to Randy.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Okay.
I've been promising I'm going to call him by 9:30. So I've got.
Okay. So you guys are going to go. Well,
Yeah, I gotta go.
Anyhow, but I guess that's it. I mean, does anyone have any insider input on what we think we're getting, or you know, or we're just all?
I have a few
As
party
little as
thoughts.
possible.
Yeah.
As little as possible.
Yeah.
I personally am of the belief that the ETs are showing themselves to the military on a daily basis because they want to. They have made a decision to press this issue, that they are here. And now it's interesting that the pilots are able to come forward and report what they see. And so I do anticipate that we will see more reports from the pilots.
Well, you know,
and maybe one of the silver linings from them, even though it was underwhelming to us, that it will embolden more pilots to come forward.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's one thing. Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about with this report and everything that's been happening. We already discussed it tonight, which is that they're gonna, you know, it's safe now, and you have people coming forward, and I don't see any reason that would slow down, that we're going to get more people coming forward. And it seems like the Navy's very supportive of Navy individuals, you know, within the Navy, whatever they are, and whatever, you know, branch of it, that they're supported to come forward. I think, yeah, I mean, Dan, maybe you can speak to that, being the whistleblower expert. I mean, are we expecting a lot more of this? I feel like we are.
I just like to follow up with the point that clearly the ETs, let's assume they're otherworldly beings that are piloting these ships, which is what I believe. And they are trying to work through the normal channels and they're frustrated. They're not getting the press, and the disclosure isn't happening. So now, you know, some citizens are coming forward, and Greer has to be given credit for helping initiate the CE5 movement, which is growing by leaps and bounds almost daily. And we're seeing amazing results. When we were out in Sedona a couple of weeks ago with you, Melinda, we filmed amazing stuff. And in fact, I've been so busy since then, I haven't been able to create a highlight reel, but I just texted you on your phone.
Yeah, I saw it. Thank you.
Highlight reel from May 4th. That was the International Making Contact Day, the launch of this. And I'm absolutely convinced that this is going to be a big thing. And if you, I don't know if you want to show that if you have the link, you can pull it up and share it with everyone, but it's only a minute long. And it's quite remarkable footage of the stuff. You were the spotter when we filmed this, and you were the one telling us what we were looking at. And so I don't know if you're able to pull that up on your screen right now or not.
Well, you text it to me on my phone.
Yes.
Yeah, I think because I'm not sure that I would know how to do that unless I'd have to have you. Well, maybe if you send it to me in Messenger or something, but I have no idea how to bring it up in Zoom.
Can I ask a question?
But I'll put it, what I will do is I will put it on Facebook and on Twitter and share it out there.
And we can link it to this as well.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So that's right. So we can put it up and put a link.
Okay.
While they're working on that, can I ask you a quick question about the CE5 stuff that you talked about? Since you did bring it up and you're thinking about trying to create a protocol or some sort of method or something like that, I'm guessing that you didn't just start CE5, right? You've been doing this for a while.
I've been doing it since 2012.
Okay. Can I ask you, have you made any progress understanding what the heck those lights are, what they want, what they're saying at all from that point on? Because it seems to be a really hard thing to do to get Congress to wrap their heads around that over acknowledging submarines from outer space.
Tell them about your book, Jeff.
Yeah, well,
Or,
I'm writing a book about my contact experience in 2012. So, in a nutshell, I had a face-to-face contact with an extraterrestrial that lasted over a 13-day period of time. And I was given the privilege of asking this being any question I wanted. And what I learned blew my mind about the nature of this phenomenon, who they truly are, and what they're about, and the cosmology of the universe that we have. Hold on, I need to help Danny get out of my RV.
I was wondering where you guys were sitting. They're in his
Tell it was
motorhome.
an RV.
Just to jump in though, Danny said it just a few minutes ago, that, after talking with experiencer after experiencer from 40 years ago to now, no nukes and no pollution. That's the general message.
So they're waiting for us to get rid of our nukes and stop polluting before they make another.
But they're not going to. The idea is not they're going to land. That's not what they're here to do. They're just giving us these warnings, and the nukes is to protect to stop us from destroying the planet. Because as Danny points out, it affects the rest of the universe. So the message, the other message, is the oneness message. That unless you get together as one, you're toast. But you can destroy yourselves, but you're not going to destroy the planet because it affects us. That's why they're so worried about the nukes.
Well, Grant, you just said something. I was about to say to add that the other major message from them, and you just said the oneness, so I was shaking my hand, is consciousness, that everything is consciousness, is a huge message from them, that everything, in fact, I've been getting downloads about there's no such thing as physical, everything is spiritual matter. So what we call the third dimension is a spiritual dimension. So everything is consciousness. And and I know, Grant, you're on that, and I can look at this panel and say I know the majority of the people on this panel are onto that to varying degrees.
Yeah, I would always steer away from the idea that there's going to be a mass landing, because that's why I always say people always want to confuse aliens with Santa Claus. I mean, they're not here to bring us toys and pie and dessert and stuff like that. They're just messaging. That's what they said to Bob Bigelow. If you saw the Bob Bigelow interview, Knapp said you had to Skinwalker Ranch for all these years. So what was it all about? And he said, it was about messaging. It was about gaming and messaging. That's what it was about. And that was his conclusion, that they're never going to interfere. They can't do that.
Does everyone agree with that here, though? That
Well,
they're never.
I think that they interfere, but under certain exceptions, do they interfere? I mean,
the nuclear weapons. Yeah.
With the nuclear weapons, they shut off.
But that's just it. If the nuclear weapons are so important, if they affect, obviously the health of the Earth and maybe even the galaxy or the universe, then why haven't they taken care of it?
Human psychology.
Well, it's a complicated.
The so-called aliens. If it's that important, why haven't they taken care of it?
Well, there's a reason. There is a good reason why they haven't taken care of it, and that's because think of us as adolescent children, and they are our parents. They are trying to show us the way to take responsibility for ourselves, and they're not the doting parents that are going to wave a magic wand and take care of all of our problems. We have to deal with our own crap. And so they're not going to let us, harm ourselves, like with nuclear weapons, but they'll let us, have a mess and learn some lessons through karmic, through karma, the modus operandi of karma. We learn these tough lessons, but they're going to, they're not here to to solve all of our problems.
I'll tell you the message that was told to me in 1978 by Walt Andrus, the head of MUFON, told me he had talked to Wilbur Smith, who ran the Canadian government UFO program, and Wilbur had told him that the beings had told him that they would never step in, they would never interfere except for a nuclear exchange, and they would stop it, and they could take the moon in front of the entire world, split it in half, put it back together to prove that they could stop it. Other than that, they are going to allow the human race to stew in its own juices. That was the message the Canadians claimed to have gotten.
How does this all jive with like abductees and say my experience with the phenomenon? The thing scared the living shit out of me and all my friends, and then 20 years later, I get some weird psychological,
But you get all
psychedelic
sorts of
trip that
trauma.
told me it saved me. Like that seems like intervention. We directly see this thing directly in front, right in front of us, scare us, and then 20 years later it tells me.
Unless it's a reincarnation world, then you agreed to that. You set that thing up. It's the same idea as like we believe that we're pawns or corks in a stream, and that we're victims to all the stuff going on the outside, and we keep forgetting that we may have part in what we're doing, like a near-death experience. Why would you have a bad near-death experience or a bad psychedelic experience or whatever? I mean, it's in a reincarnation world. It's all experience. It's not good things and bad things.
Well, and Jeff, in regards to what you were just saying, I'm an experiencer too, but there's so many known cases of people learning and being gifted stuff and healings, physical healings, emotional healings, that I think that's on an individual basis as opposed to the idea of all of mankind. I think Mark's statements is more like they want all of mankind to excel. That feels correct to me, but I think on an individual basis, if they're working with you individually, whether it's contact, abduction experience, or whatever, witness, whatever you have happen, because even, hey, getting back to the TV show tonight and these military witnesses, a lot of them, like a guy was just on Coast to Coast last night, Kevin Day was supposed to be on Coast to Coast last night with Connie Willis, and he ended up having a power outage and wasn't able to be there. I wish he had been here with us. He was going to attempt to be here with us, but he was traveling. And I wish he was, because he would have addressed that this has had this huge effect on the rest of his life. There's another guy who was a witness on the Princeton, and that guy has come forward, or not on the Princeton, on the Roosevelt. And that guy did go on Coast to Coast and talked about how this affected his whole life. And we've heard that from some of these other guys. I mean, when I helped host MegaCon and had them all come out in public and, speak at the conference, so many of them, I can say Gary Voorhees, and I mean, all of them, PJ, everyone, they had this greatly affect them in their life. And so I think on an individual basis, there's the individual experience you're having, and then the experience we have together as a planet. Anyways, that was a long explanation.
Thanks for that. No, that makes sense. Can I ask though? I mean, I don't think I got an answer though. Is everyone in agreement that this phenomenon is all the same thing? Because I do hear so many conflicting statements about what's going on from so many power. I see Tom shaking his head no.
Yeah.
Well, we know that there are at least several groups involved in all this, and one or more are positive toward us, one or more are neutral, perhaps, and some may be very negative. So I don't. Sometimes we talk about this like it's a monolithic thing, and it's not.
And then there's also levels of spirit and consciousness too, so could it be, is some of it energetic? Is some of it a light phenomenon? Is some of it consciousness? Is some of it ETs, like Tom was just saying, that may be from multiple different places or have different agendas? I mean, I think yes to all that,
Let me quote Bashar when it comes to evil aliens. Linda Moulton Howe said, "Which race should we fear?" And he said, "You. We have met the enemy, and he is us. We are the crazy people in the universe." And people, anybody has a negative ET, I say, when they drop the first atomic bomb, give me the petition, I might sign it. But until then, we've met the enemy, and it is us. We are the ones that are making the mess here.
I want to do a little arithmetic. So there are a trillion galaxies, and in every galaxy, there's 100 billion Earths, just like ours, approximately the same atmosphere, water, and chemistry. And to think there aren't billions of intelligent species throughout the universe is foolish.
Yeah. The other thing I would bring up is,
why would it be only one? Why would it be only one?
That just seems to be the talk
billions
now.
And billions.
Especially when James Fox names it the phenomenon, and then you have to explain to every single person you walk into that it's not one. I mean, then even my co-host of the show, Chase Williams, Chase, Bob, I think you guys have met before. I mean, I can't get 5 seconds into a conversation about something with nuts and bolts before we turn it into that's not a real thing. You're not seeing a real thing. You're seeing and even Valet himself, the champion of that hypothesis, flat out said that now that we know it's a technology, we have to rethink things. I mean, he said that himself in the last 5
He
lectures
may
about the
have
meta
to,
materials.
I mean,
Yeah, I mean, they never want. You guys were asking why he's maybe back in this book. It's because this book's way more nuts and bolts than any other case he's covered in a long time, in my opinion.
And the other thing I would point,
I don't understand how
and
you,
again,
I don't understand how you go from Passport to Magonia to Trinity. I don't understand how you get there.
well, and like
They're
I said a
both
little
good.
while ago, if
Maybe he
the
did some
third
ayahuasca.
dimension, what we call the physical dimension, is actually a spiritual dimension, then all the other dimensions and levels of consciousness, you could say, are as physical as this, or we are as much consciousness and energy as they are. Both statements, both extremes would be accurate. So it can be physical and spiritual both, just like this is. It's physical and spiritual both. Physical is a spiritual dimension. So when you go to that, could the technology be physical and yet be multidimensional in consciousness as well? Absolutely.
So
Anyways, that's just and I own that as Melinda's own view, but I'm probably not alone.
I like that.
I want to point out that Donald Hoffman is one of the fathers of conscious agents and one of the fathers of we don't see actual reality, we live in an illusion. And Donald Hoffman and his scientific group are trying to derive all of physical objects from conscious agents. And if that happens, everything that Linda has told you from her completely subjective, interactive, personal experience kind of thing will then be borne out by actual scientists.
I actually thought
If
we were
that
going to make
happens.
it through a panel without hearing Donald Hoffman's name brought up, which is
Not in my world. No.
He's made it into
Not
everything
in my
now.
world. No, not in my world. I believe the guy.
I'm not trying to hijack this panel at all, but someone brought up healing earlier, and it's like the one thing I never hear anyone talk about. And Bob, I never get to speak to you. Is there any chance you could tell us that story real quick that I heard you mention on a podcast about the water hitting you?
I'm happy to tell. So
Thank you.
I went to visit Chris Bledsoe, and Chris Bledsoe and I had 4 days of interaction. And on the last day of interaction, we went outside and observed the sky. I saw multiple objects, multiple things, multiple craziness. And I went in and says, hey, look, Chris, I'm going to think over the next couple of weeks how I can help you. And then I went home and had multiple paranormal experiences happen to me after I left him. So I was introduced to the concept of hitchhiker. So I had a hitchhiker come home, and after the hitchhiker did its thing, and I called Chris up, I says, look, okay, I surrender. I'm going to give in to you and the hitchhiker. I'm going to help you do something. My wife's right-sided weakness from her stroke was healed. And before we left Virginia to move home to our home state, she went to her final neurological exam, and in her exam, they cannot find the lesion which caused her stroke.
wow.
This is
She's
the part of the
completely
phenomenon we
healed.
never hear about. This is
No,
the stuff
I'm
that I
just
would love
telling
to
you,
hear more.
I'm not saying it is, but the coincidences are much too high for me not to say there is a definite correlation between my experiences with Chris and my wife's been healed, and she believes it. That's what really matters. And her neurosurgeon says, I can't find the place you had a problem. It's gone.
I'll add to that. I was with Chris in Maine. He healed 2 people when I was in Maine. And the other thing is, if you look at the free survey, the Edgar Mitchell free survey, 50% of all experiencers that did the survey claimed they had either they or someone in their family had been healed. And 50% of them say they could heal other people. Like Ray Hernandez makes a joke. If I had $1 for every experiencer who can do Reiki healing, I'd be a rich guy.
Unfortunately, I need to drop off.
Yeah, I think we should shut her down here because I think Desta has to go too.
Yep, I think it's a good time to wrap it up. And just my final thoughts from this morning's news broadcast to tonight on 60 Minutes. I will say it was really wonderful not to hear the X-File theme song playing in the background. And it was really nice that the broadcasters didn't laugh and snark in some sort of way.
Yes.
Well,
and there wasn't a mention.
They had the pipe organ. They had the pipe organ from Close Encounters.
Right, they did.
This
They
morning,
did play the Close Encounters, but You know, overall, when we're speaking to the community, yeah, we're a little, you know, meh about today's events, but overall, globally, this is a win. This is a notch in the win category for ufology, and I think we can celebrate that. So thank you for being with us tonight, everybody.
Thank you for doing this.
Yeah.
And Mark, please go. Are you about to go talk to Dan?
Danny's right here.
Oh, he's right here. Oh, okay. Well, Dan, get on the camera. But anyways, I want to thank you, Dan, for coming and sharing everything you shared. Huge revelations. That was major news, as you know, in this community, and people will be talking about it for a while. And thank you for surprising the heck out of me by bringing Mark on. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that, to thank Danny. I said earlier, once I saw I posted on Twitter, once I saw the 60-minute story, I said, I think we've got the 60-minute story beat tonight. And Danny did beat the 60-minute story. So thank you, Danny, for what you shared.
I agree.
It was a pretty low standard to have to beat.
Yeah. Danny, I'm going to get the opportunity to meet you in June at MegaCon. We're both slated to speak. So I'm going to be running up on you at some point.
Oh, great. Good deal.
Thank you so much.
Guys.
Thanks again, Dan and Mark
Thank
and
you.
everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night, kids. All right.
Good night, everybody.
Good night,
Thank you for
everybody.
watching on YouTube.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.